Chapter 420. In front of Yang Kai's mansion, Wuxing's arrogant attitude and exaggerated words not only made Yang Kai frown, but also made the young man opposite him look displeased, coldly snorting. Wuxing grinned and was about to say something when Yang Kai grabbed his clothes and flung him away. With a beautiful somersault mid-air, Wuxing Chen landed gracefully on the ground, pinching his nose, not daring to complain, only wearing an embarrassed expression. Seeing this scene, the young man couldn't help turning his eyes to Yang Kai, the cultivators standing behind him also whispering to each other. "I'm the one you're looking for." Yang Kai stared at the newcomer indifferently. The young man couldn't help frowning slightly, but his eyes still flashed with an arrogant and unruly light as he stared at Yang Kai provocatively, not moving from his spot as he said indifferently, "Greetings, Lord Kai. Who are you?" Yang Kai also thought this was quite interesting. No wonder Chiu Meng said this young man's attitude was a bit strange. This young man looked like he had come to ally with him, bringing not only a lot of cultivator but also 4 boxes of supplies, but his expression was clearly somewhat reluctant, as if he was being coerced. Yang Kai couldn't remember where he had seen this young man before. "Xiang Tian Shao." The young man replied in a deep voice. "Xiang Tian Shao." Yang Kai's brow furrowed, suddenly realizing this young man's surname. Thinking of something, he raised his brow and smiled. "Who is Xiang Chu to you?" Xiang Chu, whom Yang Kai had met a few months ago in Taifang Mountain, was the Grand Duke of the first-class Xiang family and the future successor of the Xiang family. At that time, Xiang Chu and Nanxing had joined forces to coerce Yang Kai, but at the last moment, Yang Kai's blood warrior had come to him and plucked 2 of the golden feather eagle's feathers to frame him, forcing the 4 immortal ascension boundary masters from the Xiang and Nan families to lose an arm and Nanxing to cut off 2 of his own fingers. The status of these 2 wasn't low, so Yang Kai couldn't kill them rashly, so he could only let them go, but before they left, Yang Kai had told them that within 3 months he would see their sincerity in the central capital. Now it seemed that this Xiang Tian Shao was definitely related to Xiang Chu, so the origin of these cultivator and supplies made sense. "He is my eldest brother." Xiang Tian Shao replied lightly. Sure enough, Yang Kai nodded slightly and swept his eyes over the cultivators with a smile. "Is this the sincerity of your Xiang family?" "Very good, I'm very satisfied." Xiang Tian slowly shook his head. "Yang Kai, of course, yours faces, these 4 boxes represent the sincerity of the Nan's family." "Good. I don't worry, of course, you, of course, to be honest, these things to help me." These 2 first-class families, one providing people while the other providing supplies, were both quite reasonable. Yang Kai guessed that they were afraid that news of them attempting to kill a Yang family descendant would spread, so they were willing to swallow their anger and pay up. Xiang Tian Zhao's eyes overflowed with contempt as his mouth curled into a sneer. "Your tone is bigger than the heavens. I'm not in the mood to ask about your grievances with my eldest brother, but if you want me to help you participate in the inheritance war, you'll have to show me your skills first." You want to fight with him?" Wuxing Chen suddenly laughed as he stared towards Xiang Tian Shao, a look of interest flashing across his eyes as he shook his head. "Second young Master Xiang, it's not that I don't have a good opinion of you, it's just that following him isn't a wise decision." Chiu Meng also smiled as she stared at Xiang Tian Shao. Both of them had fought Yang Kai before, but when Chiu Meng and Yang Kai met, he was only a Yuan Qi 3rd stage cultivator. At that time, he was able to fight evenly with her, perhaps even surpassing her. Now that Yang Kai had broken through to the Yuan Qi 8th stage, even if Chiu Meng had successfully broken through to the Immortal Ascension Boundary 1st stage, she wouldn't dare boast that she could defeat Yang Kai. As for Wuxing, what happened that night was simply a nightmare. After all, he was the eldest brother of one of the 8 great families, the only son of his family. Although he had spent many years indulging in sensual pleasures, he had consumed countless precious treasures, so his strength wasn't weak. He also carried a number of extraordinary artifacts on him. Even with this kind of heritage, he had still been defeated by Yang Kai in a single exchange, not even giving him time to react, which was enough to show just how tyrannical Yang Kai was. Wuxia didn't think that this young could win against Yang Kai in terms of martial prowess. Among the younger generation, the only one who could win against Yang Kai was Lu Qingyao of the Lu family. Besides him, there was no one else. Xiang Tianshao took in the expressions of Wuxia and Qiu Yimeng, his heart trembling slightly. With his eyesight, he could naturally see the strength of these two. Although he didn't know who they were, for them to be so strong at such a young age, they were definitely from one of the 8 great families. Although these two didn't say much, their demeanor and tone had already explained a lot. Is this Yang Kai really that strong? Taking a closer look at Yang Kai, Xiang Tianshao secretly shook his head. He couldn't see through Yang Kai's depths at all. This Yang Jiagong just stood there, his yuan qi like an ancient well, seemingly restrained to the extreme, without the slightest trace of leaking out. This degree of restraint, either his own strength was extremely high, or he was using some kind of artifact to deceive others. Xiang Tianshao couldn't figure out whether this young man had real skill or was just bluffing. If he wanted to understand his true strength, the only way was to fight him. Now that things had reached this point, Xiang Tianshao had no way to retreat, so he shouted, "If you only relied on your 2 blood warriors to cause my eldest brother to fall so miserably, then that's nothing. If you want me to wholeheartedly assist you, you'll have to defeat me first." Wuxia couldn't help shaking his head and sighing, walking over to Qiu Yimeng and lamenting, "This child is hopeless." Qiu Yimeng nodded heavily, expressing her agreement. Listening to them say this, Xiang Tianshao couldn't help feeling a little angry. Even the 4 immortal Ascension Boundary Masters behind him couldn't help glaring at Wuxia, seemingly thinking that he shouldn't be so contemptuous of his family's second young lord. Traces of horrifying lights flickered within it, and it possessed an imposing aura that shot into the sky like a rainbow. This energy ball was the size of a millstone, fierce, murderous, and contained the power of thunder and lightning. With the support of the power of thunder and lightning, Xiang Tianzhao's speed seemed to have reached a limit, leaving behind a series of afterimages as he rushed forward. Thunder Blade Flash. This was one of Xiang Tianzhao's killing moves, invincible and unstoppable. Often, under this move, his opponent would only be routed. The Xiang family cultivator showed a faint smile on their faces, their eyes full of expectation, wanting to see how Yang Kai would be hit by this move. Chapter 421. This move of Xiang Tianzhao's had been honed for a long time and was something he had comprehended himself through the Xiang family's secret arts. Mixed with the power of thunder and lightning, it was invincible and had been praised by many of the Xiang family's masters. This was one of his killing moves that he had always only used when facing the most powerful enemy. It was so powerful that it was often enough to determine victory. Seeing him use this move, the Xiang family cultivator knew that the second young lord was truly angry, otherwise, it would be impossible for him to be so murderous. "Let's see how you block it." The several Xiang family immortal Ascension Boundary Masters secretly sneered, thinking that after the second young lord defeated Yang Kai, they would immediately leave this place. There was no need to stay and help him participate in the inheritance war. In this muddy water, it was best not to get involved. As for the supplies, they were the Nan family's compensation to Yang Kai, so there was nothing wrong with leaving them behind. Qiu Yimeng was also secretly shocked, her face filled with shock. She hadn't expected that the second young lord's combat power would be so strong, and he had even used a killing move right from the start. Such a move was impossible for an immortal Ascension Boundary cultivator to resist. Even she, an immortal ascension boundary first stage cultivator, would have to first avoid this attack and then look for an opportunity to strike. She didn't know if Yang Kai could block this attack. Although she had seen Yang Kai's strength before, after not fighting for so long, Qiu Yimeng wasn't sure how strong Yang Kai had become. But when she remembered that day by the Mist River, Yang Kai had single-handedly killed an immortal ascension boundary third stage master, Qiu Yimeng instantly calmed down. Even if Xiang Tianshao was strong, he couldn't be stronger than an immortal ascension boundary third stage cultivator, right? With a loud bang, the lightning ball on the tip of Xiang Tianzhao's saber suddenly split apart and weaved into an impenetrable net of lightning that enveloped a radius of several dozen meters. Thousands of bolts of lightning swam like snakes, each of them containing Xiang Tianzhao's saber qi, sharp and unparalleled, covering the sky and earth. Surrounded by this net of lightning, Hua's stars widened his eyes. His unruly expression finally disappeared, and his face was full of shock. Yang Kai was still standing in the same place, like an iceberg that would never melt. His expression was as cold as a knife as he indifferently watched the countless lightning bolts entangling him. Xiang Tianxiao's expression was meticulous, but the corners of his mouth inadvertently revealed a faint smile. He won. He was enveloped by this move. No one under the immortal ascension boundary could escape from it. He would only be knocked down to the ground by the power of his blade qi and lightning. He had full confidence in this. A bright light flashed, so bright that people couldn't open their eyes. At this moment, Yang Kai's figure suddenly blurred and disappeared without a trace. The next moment, the boundless electric light was shattered into pieces in the violent yuan qi waves. A large handprint rapidly enlarged in Xiang Tianxiao's eyes, seemingly covering the entire sky. He couldn't help but have the misconception that he couldn't avoid it, and it imprinted itself on his chest. With a muffled groan, Xiang's second young master flew like a kite with a broken string. He flew far away, his face pale in midair, and he spat out a pool of blood. Second young master. The several immortal ascension boundary cultivators who were watching the show suddenly saw that the situation was not right. They couldn't help but change their expressions greatly, and they all came forward. They reached out and caught Xiang Tianshao falling from midair. The dust settled. Yang Kai didn't seem to have moved at all. He still stood in the same place with a calm face, his expression still indifferent. Hua's teeth were a little sore. He suddenly found that Yang Kai seemed to have been merciful when dealing with him that night. The cultivators from the Xiang family were all dumbstruck, their eyes almost popping out of their sockets, their eyes filled with disbelief. Xiang Tianshao spilled some blood from the corner of his mouth. His body swayed, and he broke free from the support of his family's experts. He frowned, his eyes full of unwillingness. Looking at Yang Kai in a daze, for a long time, the unwillingness in Xiang Tianxiao's eyes slowly faded, and he became a little dispirited. He had never expected that someone in the Yuan Qi boundary would be able to defeat him so easily. He was a rare genius of the Xiang family, his aptitude far better than Xiang Chu's. The Xiang family had also vigorously cultivated him, and at such a young age he had already reached the immortal ascension boundary. In time, his future would be limitless. Xiang Tianshao had always been the one to win a battle, but never had he been so thoroughly defeated like today. His own moves hadn't even been able to lift the corners of his opponent's clothes, which was quite a blow to him. Second young master. The Xiang family immortal ascension boundary fourth stage master was afraid that Xiang Tianshao would not be able to withstand the blow and become disheartened, so he quickly tried to comfort him. Winning and losing are common, don't take it to heart. Xiang Tianshao nodded gently, the dispirited look in his eyes disappearing in an instant. When he turned to look at Yang Kai again, his eyes were burning like flames. Yang Kai was secretly surprised. This Xiang Tianshao, his mental fortitude was quite good. If he was given enough time to hone himself, his future achievements would even surpass those of some of the 8 great families' young lords. Chiu Meng giggled to the side, a happy expression on her face while Starswood shook her head and sighed. So strong? How did he cultivate? Chiu Meng, arrange things for them. Also, have your autumn rain hall people carry those 4 boxes to my room, Yang Kai faintly said, no longer looking at Xiang Tianshao as he turned around and walked into the house. Before leaving though, he seemed to inadvertently glance in a certain direction. In that direction, the 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage Masters couldn't help feeling shocked. One of them was startled and asked suspiciously, "Did that young Lord Kai discover us?" The other man also looked stunned and shook his head. "That can't be, we hid so well and didn't show any hostility, only secretly observing him. How could he have discovered us? Then why did he look in our direction? Strange." The other master was puzzled. "Don't worry about him, the Patriarch just told us to observe how this young Lord Kai performs tonight. If he loses tonight, then we'll take the young master back." Of all the people the young master could have chosen, why did he choose this young lord with no future as an ally? But speaking of which, this young Lord Kai's combat strength is really too strong. I don't think anyone who has just broken through to the Immortal Ascension boundary is his opponent. Outside the house, Chiu Meng walked over to the group of Xiang family people with a smile. The Immortal Ascension Boundary 4th Stage Master quickly bowed respectfully. "Xiang family Xiang Fei greets young Lady Chiu." At the same time, a look of suspicion appeared on his face. The Chiu family and the Yang family's 6th lord, Yang Shen, had become allies. This was something he had naturally heard about, but why was the Chiu family's first young lady in Yang Kai's house at this moment? Moreover, looking at Yang Kai's attitude towards her, it was as if he was ordering her around. On the other hand, this famous Chiu family first young lady didn't have the slightest complaint, instead remaining calm and willing to be ordered around. Unable to understand, Xiang Fei was filled with doubts. Xiang Tianshao also cupped his fists in greeting. Chiu Meng chuckled and said, "You don't need to be so polite. From now on, we'll be working together." Xiang Fei nodded. "Since young Lord Kai can defeat my family's 2nd young master, my Xiang family will also keep its word. As long as young Lord Kai is not defeated in the inheritance war, we will do our best to assist him." Chiu Meng nodded with satisfaction. "But first young Lady Chiu, why are you?" Xiang Fei asked the doubts in his heart. "I am his ally, Chiu Meng smiled and didn't explain too much. Xiang Tianshao and Xiang Fei's expressions changed slightly. Suddenly, they discovered that this young Lord Kai, who no one was optimistic about, had quietly gained 2 young lords and young ladies from the 8 great families as allies. Among the 8 young lords, this was a unique situation. "Let's go inside first, I'll arrange things for you," Chiu Meng said, shaking her head and smiling bitterly. "I didn't expect to come here only to take on the role of a housekeeper." Leading the Xiang family group inside, Wuxia waved his folding fan and walked up to them, wrapping his arm around Xiang Tianzhao's shoulder affectionately. "Fellow sufferers, I'll treat you to a drink." Xiang Tianzhao nodded. "Good. After drinking, I'll take you to the Spring Breeze Pavilion to enjoy yourself." "That won't be necessary." With a few soft knocks, Yang Kai opened his eyes and said, "Come in." The door was pushed open and Chiu Meng walked in, her appearance dignified, a fragrant scent wafting from her body. After entering the room, she didn't hesitate to pour herself a cup of tea to moisten her throat. Behind her followed a group of people from the Autumn Rain Hall, carrying 4 large boxes, placing them inside the room before bowing and retreating. Chiu Meng didn't leave and instead sat down, looking at Yang Kai with a smile. when did you cause the Xiang and Nan families to suffer such a big setback? About 3 months after I separated from you and Luo Xiao Man last time. Tell me, what happened at that time? I asked second young Lord Xiang, but he didn't know much, only that his eldest brother and cousin both hated and feared you. It was also said that Nan Xing of the Nan family was forced to cut off 2 of his fingers by you. You really are ruthless. That's the young lord of a first-class family we're talking about, the future successor of the Nan family. They asked for it, Yang Kai sneered, frowning as he briefly described the situation at that time. Qiu Yimeng's eyes flashed as she listened, secretly feeling a burst of joy, especially when she heard that the Xiang and Nan families were humiliated and unable to resist. If that's the case, it's normal for the 2 of them to admit defeat. Attempting to kill a Yang family young lord isn't a small matter, especially after the death of your Yang family's 4th young lord. If someone were to link these 2 incidents together, the Xiang and Nan families would be finished. Tell me about the Xiang family situation, especially the relationship between Xiang Tianshao and Xiang Chu. Yang Kai stood up and walked over to the 4 boxes, inspecting them while asking casually. Like a fox. Qiu Yimeng curled her lips disdainfully. Yang Kai chuckled. Xiang Chu obviously didn't tell his younger brother everything, otherwise, Xiang Tianshao wouldn't have rashly challenged me today. An older brother hiding things from his younger brother, the relationship between the 2 is obviously not very harmonious. If I couldn't see that, wouldn't I be blind? Chapter 422. At that time, Yang Kai had told the Xiang and Nan families that he wanted to see their sincerity within 3 months. The Nan family had sent 4 boxes of supplies, so it could be said that they had paid a heavy price. However, the Xiang family had sent a group of people, led by the 2nd young lord himself, which made Yang Kai somewhat confused. However, after a brief exchange, he had some speculations in his heart, so he decided to ask Qiu Yimeng about the situation. This Qiu family first young lady was different from him. She had lived in the central capital all year round and knew a lot about the world. What kind of inside story did the Xiang family have? With her Qiu family's heritage and means, she must have heard some rumors. Listening to Yang Kai's words, Qiu Yimeng smiled bitterly. This man's shrewdness really made it difficult for her to resist. You've met the Xiang family's Xiang Chu, the eldest young lord of the Xiang family and the future successor. This 2nd young lord is said to be the son of a concubine, so his status in the family is naturally not as high as his eldest brother's, but this person is very qualified and talented in cultivation. He is the most outstanding genius the Xiang family has produced in the past few decades. When you fought with him just now, you should be able to see that such a young Yuan Qi 9th stage master is quite rare. Yang Kai nodded. Among the younger generation of the Yang family, there were only a few Yuan Qi 9th stage masters, but that was because the family's young lords were often out in the world and did not have access to many resources. However, Xiang Tianzhao's aptitude was truly exceptional. Even first-class forces had their own geniuses. For example, when Yang Kai first met the 9-star sword sex Wu Qingyi in that isolated world, he was already at the 7th or 8th stage of Yuan Qi. If he had lived until now, he may have broken through to the immortal ascension boundary. However, Wu Qingyi was actually older than Xiang Tianshao. Xiang Chu is a scheming and shrewd person, but his younger brother, Xiang Tianshao, is the complete opposite of him. Xiang Tianshao is more straightforward, coupled with his excellent aptitude, he has won the favor of many of the Xiang family's elders. Qiu Yimeng smiled slightly, so, the problem has arisen. About the successor. Yang Kai frowned slightly. Among all the great forces, only your Yang family chooses its successor through the inheritance war. As for the other 7 great families of the central capital, In fact, all of the first-rate forces in the world basically let the eldest son take over the position of the head of the family. When Chiu Meng spoke of this, her expression couldn't help but change slightly, but she quickly recovered and continued, as long as the eldest son isn't too bad, this position is generally stable. This was because the successor to the position of the head of the family did not need to have a strong cultivation base. It was fine as long as he could manage the entire clan well. For example, the Liu family's Liu Liangyu once met. He was only an immortal ascension boundary 7th stage cultivator. There were a few people who were stronger than him, but he was still the patriarch. Firstly, he had the ability to do so. Secondly, he was the eldest son of the Liu family. Our Chiu family will be the same in the future. As for the Xiang family, Xiang Chu is the legitimate heir. However, Xiang Tianzhao's outstanding performance made Xiang Chu realize some crisis. I heard. From what Yang Kai had heard, Xiang Chu often used underhanded means to deal with his younger brother, and Xiang Tianzhao never once resisted. It seems that for him, he didn't want to compete for power. Yang Kai listened to these words and confirmed his own judgment, nodding. With Xiang Chu's personality, it is indeed possible for him to do such a thing. So, you can understand why Xiang Tianzhao appeared in your house, right? Chiu Meng asked with a smile. I understand. Yang Kai nodded in understanding. Xiang Chu feared his younger brother's ability, and since Yang Kai was blackmailing him, he had sent his younger brother here to assist Yang Kai in the inheritance war. First, Yang Kai really needed help in the inheritance war, so this was a good opportunity. This kind of sincerity may be more useful than the Nan family's 4 boxes of supplies. Secondly, Xiang Tianzhao was with Yang Kai, so as long as he assisted the other Yang family young lords in the inheritance war to defeat Yang Kai, it would be tantamount to proving to the family that he was better than his younger brother. By doing so, his position as the successor would be secure. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone, Xiang Chu had done a good job. It was very likely that he also intended to cut off those who supported Xiang Tianzhao during the inheritance war. Because those people were the ones who supported Xiang Tianzhao in the family. Do you think this person is useful? Yang Kai looked up at Chiu Meng. Yang Kai's kind inquiry immediately made Chiu Meng smile like a flower. I think he is useful. But whether you use him or not is up to you to decide. Let's put it aside for now. Yang Kai didn't deny it. Whether this second young Lord Xiang was sincerely assisting him or not was still unknown. Yang Kai had always been a cautious person. It was impossible for him to trust a complete stranger just because of this information. Time will reveal a person's heart, and a long journey will test a horse's strength. Knowing he would say this, Chiu Meng nodded lightly and said, but I got some bad news from Xiang Tianzhao. Do you want to hear it? What news? His eldest brother and the Nan family's Nanxing are also in War City. Chiu Meng giggled. Yang Kai wasn't surprised at all, his expression indifferent as he asked, who did they choose? Your second brother, Yang Zhao. Not bad. Yang Kai snorted, it looks like tonight will be quite lively. Chiu Meng also smiled lightly, but her expression was no longer tense. Since Yang Kai wanted her to watch a good show tonight, she naturally didn't need to worry about anything else. Is there anything else young Lord Kai needs? If there's nothing else, this servant will take her leave. Chiu Meng asked with a smile. Yang Kai glanced at her strangely and curled his lips, don't tease me, I can't afford it. Seeing the awkward look on Yang Kai's face, Chiu Meng couldn't help laughing happily. But there really is one thing I need you to do. Yang Kai's expression became serious as he said. What is it? 1,000 meters outside the mansion, there are 2 old men in that elm tree. Find someone to send them 2 pots of wine. Chiu Yi Meng was stunned. 2 old men. What kind of people? I guess they're from the Huo family, probably here to protect Huo stars. The Chiu family's first young lady blinked a few times, her expression blank. She didn't understand why Yang Kai was so sure there were 2 people there. And since they were here to protect Huo stars, they must be masters who followed the central capital Wolf Young Lord Huo all year round. That was an immortal ascension boundary 8th stage master. With their cultivation, how could they be discovered by Yang Kai? Although she was confused, Chiu Yi Meng didn't feel that Yang Kai's guess was abrupt. Although Huo Zheng was infuriated by his son, Huo Stars was still the sole heir of the Huo family. Now that he was alone in Yang Kai's house, it was understandable that he would be more vigilant. If there really were 2 people there, they must have been secretly sent by Huo Zheng. Chiu Yi Meng withdrew with a suspicious look on her face, frowning for a moment, then went to grab 2 pots of wine and diligently carried them out. 1,000 meters in front of Yang Kai's mansion, atop an elm tree. The dense foliage obscured the figures of the 2 powerhouses of the Huo clan. Their breaths were long and even, and their auras were restrained to the extreme. Rings of hazy halos enveloped their bodies, moving in a mysterious path, causing the 2 of them to completely fade into the air. Even if someone stood under the tree and looked up, they wouldn't be able to find any trace of these 2 unless they swept them with their divine sense. At this moment, the 2 men were sitting on the trunk of the tree, meditating. Their invisible divine senses had covered the entire Yang Kai mansion, so even the slightest movement inside couldn't escape their detection. Their tyrannical divine senses were constantly gathering and dispersing, ready to attack at any time. So even though they were hiding here, they weren't worried about anyone harming their young master. The 2 men's divine senses were so presumptuous that they naturally couldn't conceal themselves from Chu Gao Yi and Ning Zhou, but the 2 men didn't have any malicious intent. Chu Gao Yi and Ning Zhou both had to heal their wounds, so they simply turned a blind eye to their actions. From below, the sound of footsteps could be heard. At first, the 2 men didn't care. There were now tens of thousands of people living in War City, so although the location of Yang Kai's mansion was remote, there were still pedestrians passing by. But as the sound of footsteps got closer and closer, the 2 masters couldn't help opening their eyes and glancing at each other, slightly puzzled. These footsteps seemed to be coming for the 2 of them. Looking down, the 2 men couldn't help feeling shocked. They saw the Chiu family's first young lady, Chiu Yi Meng, at this moment, like a maidservant, holding a tray with 2 pots of aged wine on it, a smile on her face as she walked towards them step by step. Under the tree, Chiu Yi Meng looked up and saw one of the Huo family's masters. This man's heart clenched as he subconsciously thought that the martial skill he had used to conceal himself had failed, but after a moment's inspection, it was clear that the martial skill was still working. Chiu Yi Meng's eyes were somewhat empty, so she should just be looking in his direction and not at him. She didn't see him. The weather is dry. 2 seniors have been up in the tree for so long, presumably you are thirsty. These 2 pots of wine will be sent to you to moisten your throats, I hope you don't mind. When this voice reached their ears, the 2 Huo family masters looked at each other and immediately stretched out their hands. A ripple spread out and the 2 figures suddenly appeared in front of Chiu Yi Meng's eyes. Since they had already been exposed, the 2 of them felt embarrassed to continue hiding. What's more, Chiu Yi Meng's identity wasn't ordinary. Seeing the 2 of them appear, Chiu Yi Meng remained calm on the surface, but in her heart she couldn't help admiring Yang Kai. The 2 Huo family masters lightly jumped down from the tree and stood in front of Chiu Yi Meng, cupping their fists. Greetings, young lady Chiu. Thank you for your trouble. Saying so, they accepted the 2 pots of wine. Please enjoy. Chiu Yi Meng smiled and nodded, turning around to leave. Young lady Chiu, please wait. One of them quickly shouted. What's wrong? Chiu Meng looked at him suspiciously. That person frowned and stammered for a while before saying, "Can I ask, young lady Chiu, how did you discover the two of us? Did the two young family blood warriors tell you?" Chapter 423. The two Hua family masters both thought it was the blood warriors who had betrayed them. Chiu Meng slowly shook her head and chuckled. "The two blood warriors are currently in the middle of healing and have no time to care about you, but it wasn't me who discovered you. I don't have such great skill." Then, haha. Junior will take her leave. Chiu Meng didn't say much and just smiled lightly. The Chiu family's first young lady was intelligent and was good at scheming. Although she had restrained herself in front of Yang Kai, she was still the same in front of others. At this time, she didn't want to reveal anything. Leaving a sense of mystery to these two would only be beneficial to Yang Kai. After Chiu Meng left, the two Hua family masters stared at the wine in their hands and sighed. They also knew who had taught Chiu Meng, but they really couldn't imagine that Yang Kai had such great skill. "What do we do now?" One of them frowned. The other also wore an ugly expression as he shook his head. "It's not easy. We took 2 pots of wine from them tonight. This young Lord Kai is really insidious." Although it was only 2 pots of wine, they had been personally delivered by the Chiu family's first young lady. The gift was light, but the sentiment was heavy. Tonight, when Yang Kai was in danger, how could they just stand by and watch? If someone else had come to deliver the wine, even if it was Yang Kai himself, the two Hua family masters could refuse, but they couldn't refuse Chiu Meng. "But the patriarch hasn't allowed us to participate in the inheritance war yet, and over the years, the other great forces have sent immortal ascension boundary 7th or 8th stage masters, even peak masters, but none of the 8 great families have sent masters above the immortal ascension boundary 5th stage. If we act rashly and are discovered, where will we put our old faces? Should we send the wine back?" One of them suggested. The other nodded. "Good, you send it back." Scram! Sending the wine back, wasn't that the same as slapping young Lady Chiu's face? Who would do such a stupid thing? Ha! The two Hua family masters glanced at each other. Both of them shook their heads and sighed. The 2 pots of wine at this moment was even hotter than a hot iron clamp. Left with no other choice, each of them shared a pot. When they drank it, it no longer had its usual mellow taste, only bitterness and helplessness. Time passed slowly. The sun set, the moon rose, and the stars dotted the sky. The sky seemed to be filled with sparkling gems. It was a magnificent sight to behold. The bustling war city during the day suddenly quieted down. Tens of thousands of pairs of eyes were closely watching the movements of the 8 young lords inside War City. Faintly discernible divine senses intertwined within War City, monitoring its surroundings. Some experts with tyrannical strength even spread out their divine senses wantonly to have a comprehensive understanding of the various situations around them. At the very center of War City. Temple of Gods. This was a majestic palace. Inside the palace, there were 8 white-haired old men. He sat cross-legged in an octagon. The 8 of them remained as calm as an ancient well, each of them circulating their secret arts, seemingly not caring about the outside world, but in fact, their divine senses had already penetrated every corner of War City. These 8 people belonged to the central capital's 8 great families. Each one of them was a top master at the above immortal ascension boundary. The young family's inheritance war was being waged in War City, and most of the world's young elites had gathered here. Almost everyone who participated in the inheritance war was a leader of their respective force, a matter of great importance. Therefore, every time the inheritance war began, the 8 great families would send an above immortal ascension boundary master to War City. Firstly, they were responsible for overseeing the outcome of the inheritance war, and secondly, they were responsible for protecting the young people who participated in it. Otherwise, if the masters of the ash-gray cloud evil land came here and wiped them out, the loss would be great. These 8 people were all over 100 years old, the oldest even reaching 200 years old. They had all but buried half of their necks in the ground, never caring about the affairs of the family or the general trend of the world, only focusing on their own cultivation and comprehension of the martial Tao. Sitting here, they would not intervene in the inheritance war, only be responsible for overseeing the outcome and guarding War City from being taken advantage of. Who won or lost, they didn't care. After reaching their level of strength, they only wanted to comprehend the mysteries of the above immortal ascension boundary while they were still alive. This was their only pursuit. In the 8 great young lords' mansions, some were eager to make trouble, some were anxious, and some were prepared to watch the fire burn across the river, sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight in an attempt to reap the benefits of the fishermen. The strength they grasped was different, so their mentality was different. The night was getting darker and darker, but there was still no movement from the 8 great young lords' mansions, causing many people who were waiting to watch the inheritance war to become anxious. Young Kai crossed his hands behind his back, his figure like a sword as he stood in the main hall of his mansion, staring at the flag hanging at the top of the hall. In the inheritance war, this flag was also a key thing. If one wanted to defeat a young lord in the inheritance war, there were 2 ways. The first was to directly capture this person. In this way, that young lord would lose the qualification to continue competing for the inheritance throne. The second way was related to this flag. Once someone took away this flag, the corresponding young lord would also lose the qualification to compete for the inheritance throne. Moreover, this flag had to be hung in a position directly above the main hall, it couldn't be carried on the person's body. The Young family had set this rule for generations, probably to give the various young lords who participated in the inheritance war a way to win, as well as to increase the difficulty of the inheritance war and test their wisdom. For the Young family young lords, this flag being hung here was nothing more than a hindrance. Because they had to send people to guard this flag at all times, to prevent it from being stolen or lost. On one hand, they had to guard their own flag, on the other hand, they had to have ideas about others. The inheritance war was a battle of wits and courage. Looking at the large Kai character on the flag, Yang Kai's mouth curled into a smile. Behind him, the Chiu family's first young lady Chiu Yi-meng, central capital Wolf Wuxia, and Xiang family's second young lord Xiang Tianshao arrived. Yang Kai only had these people at his disposal, all of them gathered here at this moment. Brother Kai, are you ready to give me your golden feather eagle? Wuxia grinned mischievously, opening his folding fan and saying, I'll tell you first, if someone comes to attack you, I'll be the first to surrender, don't expect me to help you. Chiu Yi-meng glared at him coldly, if you keep blabbering, I'll cripple you right now and throw you out. Hey, you're a woman, can you not be so grumpy? Wuxia grumbled. Xiang Tianshao quickly nodded, my Xiang family's people are all here, I'll cooperate with you. Do as you wish. Yang Kai glanced at him and said casually. Xiang Tianshao frowned but didn't say a word, turning around and walking out, apparently going to dispatch the people he had brought with him. The strength of the people he had brought with him wasn't very high. Although there were 4 immortal ascension boundary masters, in front of a real master, they were still somewhat lacking. However, tonight was the first day of the inheritance war, so the other young lords didn't necessarily have much strength at their disposal, so the people he had brought with him could still play a big role. At this point, you should tell me what you're going to do, right? Chiu Yi-meng asked with a smile, the helpers you've been hiding, shouldn't they show themselves? Yang Kai shook his head, I don't have any hidden helpers. All the people you've seen are our current strength. Really? Chiu Yi-meng's beautiful face changed slightly. I won't lie to you this time. Yang Kai said firmly. Then how are we going to defend? The Chiu family's first young lady suddenly panicked. Although the two blood warriors were powerful, how much combat strength could they possibly display? Coupled with the Xiang family's people and her own Autumn Rain Hall's people, it didn't seem like they had much strength. As long as the other side could dispatch 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th or 8th stage masters, it would be more than enough to take this place. Right now, there were at least 3 Yang family young lords who could mobilize such masters. It's not too late to regret now. Yang Kai glared at Chiu Meng coldly. Perceiving his gaze, Chiu Meng's brow furrowed slightly, suddenly realizing something and smiling. No, I believe you. Heh, I don't believe you. Wuxia laughed as he walked out. I'm going to find some bird food first, I'll feed the eagle when I get it. After saying that, he disappeared without a trace. When there were only the 2 of them left in the hall, Yang Kai suddenly said, I need to go out. Chiu Meng's expression suddenly changed as she asked in shock, Go out? What do you want to do? What do you think? The Chiu family's first young lady stared at Yang Kai incredulously, her mouth slightly open, seemingly thinking he was joking, but Yang Kai's face remained calm, not a trace of a joking expression on his face. Are you serious? Naturally, it's true. In the inheritance war, if one can capture one's opponent, the benefits they can obtain are great. Tonight is the first day, someone will definitely be eliminated. This is also an opportunity. If there were no benefits to capturing one's opponent, those who participated in the inheritance war wouldn't rashly attack others. This was a waste of time and effort while also having to worry about their own flag being stolen. Who would be willing to do such a thing? As long as one could capture a Yang family young lord or seize a flag, they could exchange it for a lot of materials from the family for their own use. Are you crazy? Chiu Meng shook her head as she stared at Yang Kai incredulously. The strength you have now isn't even enough to defend yourself, yet you want to take the initiative to attack. Tell me, who can you take out with you? My Autumn Rain Hall's people? Or the Xiang family's people? Or the 2 blood warriors? The first 2 groups of people wouldn't be of any use, but if the latter 2 were to be taken out, the house would be completely defenseless and would only be easier to defeat. I'll go alone. Yang Kai frowned. I don't agree. Chiu Meng's chest heaved up and down as she glared at Yang Kai. Yang Kai suddenly smiled and stared at her full chest for a moment before saying, I didn't ask for your opinion, I just wanted to inform you. I don't need others to interfere with my decisions. Chiu Meng's expression suddenly became bitter as she ground her teeth. After a long time, Chiu Meng took a deep breath and said, Good, since you've decided, I won't say anything more, but if you lose tonight, then I, Chiu Meng, was blind to have followed a man like you. Woman, don't say such words that can easily be misunderstood. Yang Kai sneered, besides, it's not certain who will win or lose. Chapter 424. The night was dark. Wind chasing inside the heaven room, Dong Qinghan was meditating while the 2 old men, Wind and Cloud dual guards, stood guard on either side of him, their divine senses constantly scanning the surroundings to prevent anyone from approaching and harming Dong Qinghan. Tonight was the first night of the inheritance war, so it was destined not to be peaceful. Whether the 8 great young lords were attacking or defending, they would definitely make a move. The Wind and Cloud dual guards couldn't understand why Dong Qinghan didn't seem to be worried about Yang Kai's situation, but since their young master didn't want to say more, they didn't ask. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. The expressions of the Wind and Cloud guards, who were on high alert, changed drastically. They simultaneously turned their heads to look at the door, their faces filled with shock and horror. Because under the supervision of their divine senses, they hadn't noticed when the person outside the door had arrived. If this person was an enemy, if they suddenly attacked at such a close distance, would Dong Qinghan still be alive? Thinking so, the wind and cloud dual guards suddenly began sweating profusely, hurriedly standing up and secretly circulating their Saint Qi while remaining vigilant. Perceiving their abnormalities, Dong Qinghan also opened his eyes and frowned. Who is it? It's me. A familiar voice called out from outside the door. When this voice reached his ears, not only did Dong Qinghan's expression become extremely strange, even the wind and cloud dual guards also wore strange expressions. Young master, be careful. The wind guard whispered and signaled to the cloud guard, one of them retreating to Dong Qinghan's side while the other walked over to the door and opened it while keeping an eye on the situation. At the door, a figure flashed and a man wearing a black robe entered. This person's face was covered by a large hat, so the cloud guard who opened the door only saw a pair of bright eyes. Yang Kai. Dong Qinghan narrowed his eyes and asked softly. Under the vigilant gaze of the wind and cloud dual guards, the man slowly lifted the hat on his head, revealing his true face and grinning towards Dong Qinghan. Seeing this man's appearance, Dong Qinghan couldn't help cursing, "Fuck. It's really you." Even though the wind and cloud dual guards had high cultivation and were quite old, at this moment, they couldn't help but want to roll their eyes, but fortunately, their mental fortitude was extraordinary, so they managed to endure. "Greetings, seniors." Yang Kai nodded to the storm guard and the cloud guard. "Greetings, young Lord Kai." The two quickly concealed the shock on their faces and quickly returned the courtesy. "You brat." Dong Qinghan hurriedly got up and closed the window tightly, motioning the wind and cloud dual guards to remain vigilant before hurrying over to Yang Kai, his slightly chubby face showing a dumbfounded expression. "How did you know I was here?" "I have a small force under my command that specializes in collecting information," Yang Kai explained. A small half of the Bamboo Knot Gang's members had been sent here by Yang Kai a few days ago and had now infiltrated every district of War City, allowing him to accurately find Dong Qinghan's residence. "Not bad, but do you know what you're doing?" Dong Qinghan slowly shook his head. He pulled Yang Kai to sit down. This was the inheritance war, not some child's play. As a young family direct descendant, Yang Kai had no choice but to accept. Instead of staying in his own residence to protect himself, he actually ran out. However, thinking about it for a moment, Dong Qinghan couldn't help feeling a little excited. "Are you planning to take the initiative to attack?" "I had such an idea." Yang Kai nodded. "Good boy." Dong Qinghan exclaimed. "I knew you wouldn't be unprepared." "Tell me, how many people did you bring?" "I'm alone." The excitement and smile on Dong Qinghan's face quickly stiffened, and he quickly restrained himself as he stared at Yang Kai. "I'm your cousin. Are you going to play this game with me?" Yang Kai shook his head seriously. "I'm not lying to you. I'm really the only one here." Dong Qinghan couldn't help sitting up straight, the fat on his face showing signs of twitching slightly. This time, even the wind and cloud dual guards were stunned. Running out alone at such a sensitive time in the middle of the night, was he a fool or an idiot? How could he be so bold as to regard all the heroes in this world as nothing? On top of that, he actually managed to arrive here safely, not even being intercepted halfway. This was the most incredible part. Yang Kai had a small force dedicated to collecting intelligence, so how could the other Yang family young lords who wanted to win the inheritance war not have a special intelligence network? It could be said that the 8 young lords were all monitoring each other's movements at all times. If there was even the slightest sign of trouble, they would immediately report back. "How did you manage to come here?" Dong Qinghan felt a little incredulous. "Did the 2 blood warriors around you dare to let you leave?" "They don't know." Yang Kai shook his head. When he left the mansion, he didn't tell anyone, only Chiu Yi Meng. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to come here. Then your mansion. Dong Qinghan asked anxiously. Without Yang Kai there, the people there were tantamount to having no commander. There's no problem there. Let's not talk about that. I came to you to borrow some people. Yang Kai waved his hand, interrupting Dong Qinghan's chatter. Borrow people? Dong Qinghan asked, immediately understanding and pointing to the wind and cloud dual guards of them. And I'm alone. I'm afraid I won't be able to accomplish anything. Adding them will be enough. Dong Qinghan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Even if he added the wind and cloud dual guards, it was still only 3 people. They could steal chickens and dogs, but stirring up trouble was definitely not enough. Not necessarily, but there's always a chance. Yang Kai didn't speak too confidently. For the time being he didn't know what his target situation would be like. But thinking about it, tonight, just like his own mansion, it would be very lively. If you want to borrow people, naturally, Dong Qinghan quickly said, but I also want to go. You can't, your strength is too weak, you'll only be a burden. Yang Kai refused. Dong Qinghan was rendered speechless, his face flushed red. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully and patted Dong Qinghan's shoulder. Cousin, it's not that I'm looking down on you, but right now, I can single-handedly defeat you. You should go to bed early. The wind and cloud dual guards both wore awkward expressions, not daring to speak. Come to my house tomorrow and I'll explain to you in detail. Seniors Wind and Cloud, I'll take them with me first. Yang Kai informed Dong Qinghan before standing up directly. Scram! Dong Qinghan shouted, his expression quite ugly. Yang Kai chuckled, waved to the wind and cloud dual guards, opened the door, and left. This little bastard, how much has he grown? After Yang Kai and the wind and cloud dual guards left, Dong Qinghan slowly shook his shoulders to relieve the numbness in his body. Just now, when Yang Kai had patted him, half of his meridian seemed to have been sealed, so naturally he knew that Yang Kai wasn't lying when he said he could single-handedly defeat him. But last time in High Heaven Pavilion, he had only narrowly defeated Bai Yunfeng from the Bai family, so how could he have grown so much in just a few years? Monster! Dong Qinghan muttered to himself, his face filled with resentment. Inside War City, 3 dark figures were rapidly flying. Even though the city was brightly lit and countless divine senses were intertwined, no one was able to discover the whereabouts of these 3 people. As soon as they left the inn, the wind and cloud dual guards noticed that a mysterious and powerful divine sense had wrapped around them, isolating their auras and vitality, making it impossible for outsiders to detect their whereabouts. This divine sense was so strong and strange that it was even stronger than the wind and cloud dual guard's own. It was one of the few masters they had encountered who possessed such divine sense. As a result, all they needed to do was carefully follow behind Yang Kai without worrying about exposing themselves. Seeing this, the wind and cloud dual guards finally understood how Yang Kai had been able to safely arrive at the place where Dong Qinghan lived. The 2 of them didn't know that this was Yang Kai's own divine sense, only thinking that he had used some kind of high-grade soul-type artifact to achieve this effect, causing their expectations and evaluation of Yang Kai to rise a notch. This cousin of their young master really seemed to have the potential to succeed. Under the cover of this mysterious divine sense, as long as the 3 of them didn't attack, no one would be able to discover them, making them practically invincible. Not long after, Yang Kai, who was leading the charge, suddenly turned around and hid under a roof. The wind and cloud dual guards hurriedly followed, somewhat confused as to why Yang Kai had suddenly become so cautious. Just as they were about to speak, Yang Kai stretched out his hand and gestured, causing the 2 of them to quickly hold their breath. After a moment, the sound of fluttering clothes came from all directions, followed by several figures flying forward. The wind and cloud dual guards' expressions couldn't help changing slightly, only now realizing that Yang Kai wasn't just randomly speaking, he had actually noticed that some masters were approaching. What a strong sense. Both of them were secretly shocked. Although they hadn't released their divine senses out of caution, with their immortal ascension boundary cultivations, their cultivator's intuition was still there. Even they hadn't noticed anyone approaching, yet Yang Kai had, which was enough to explain many things. Staring at the figures of the people who were flying forward, Yang Kai's mouth curled into a strange grin. These people weren't trying to hide their figures, nor were they trying to hide their identities. The leader of this group was the Yang family's fifth brother, Yang Kong, who had been escorted by Tang Yuxian. As for Tu Feng, he was nowhere to be seen. He should have been left behind in Yang Kang's mansion to guard the flag. The survival of the flag was extremely important, so a powerful blood warrior had to be left behind to guard it. It was impossible for Yang Kong to leave his own mansion empty while attacking others. Yang Kong was accompanied by a number of masters who weren't weak. These people were all rushing towards the northeast corner of War City, so it was obvious they were all from the forces that had allied with Yang Kong. That direction was also the target of Yang Kai's trip, the mansion of his third brother, Yang Tai. Shortly after Yang Kang's group left, a series of shuffling sounds rang out as countless figures flew up into the sky, following closely behind Yang Kang's group as they rushed towards the northeast corner of War City. These people were all following along to watch the fun. Tonight's battle had attracted the attention of tens of thousands of people, so naturally, there were some bored people who wanted to witness the Yang family's infighting. How could they miss such a wonderful show? Seeing such a group of bored people, Yang Kai was also somewhat happy, winking to the wind and cloud dual guards before also soaring into the sky and flying forward with the rest of the group. Even if you are my brother, that won't do. Good, I knew you would say that, Yang Kong nodded gently, the smile on his face slowly converging. If it were me, I would have said the same thing. Since that's the case, don't blame fifth brother for not showing mercy. Do as you wish. Yang Tai's expression suddenly became cold. The Duanmu family cultivator behind him also condensed their yuan qi at this moment, secretly taking precautions. At that moment, Tang Yuxian, who had always been by Yang Kang's side, suddenly frowned and whispered something. Yang Kang's expression became playful as he glanced back and called out, "Seventh brother, since you've come, why don't you just show yourself? What are you doing sneaking around?" A burst of laughter rang out as a group of people flew out from the night sky and landed in the courtyard, standing opposite Yang Kang's group. It was the Yang family's seventh brother, Yang Ying, and his allies. Yang Kong had the Gao family's Gao Rangfeng as an ally while Yang Ying had the Kong family's Kong Zhan as an ally. Yang Ying also had a blood warrior by his side, so even if there was some gap in strength between the two sides, it was very small. The crowd watching the fun suddenly became excited. With the three Yang family brothers gathered here, there would naturally be a good show to watch. Now, whether it was Yang Kong or Yang Ying, who would be the one to eat the fat piece of meat that was Yang Tai? Third brother, fifth brother, little seven greets you. Yang Ying landed and first greeted them with a smile, his face filled with warmth and gentleness. Seventh brother, if it weren't for you Xian noticing, I'm afraid fifth brother would have been stalked by you without even realizing it. Yang Kong smiled and shook his head. What is fifth brother saying? In the inheritance war, all kinds of schemes and tricks are used. Little seventh was just quietly hiding for a moment. I was worried that there might be other brothers in the crowd watching the fun. Saying so, both he and Yang Kong swept their eyes around vigilantly. Yang Kai's head was wrapped in a hat and his face was covered, but when he heard these words, he couldn't help smiling. The Wind and Cloud brothers also couldn't help feeling like they had been exposed. No one should be coming. Yang Kong slowly shook his head. Tonight, eldest brother is biding his time. He is the eldest brother, so it's only right for him to show some respect to his brothers. Tonight, he won't be participating in the first battle. Eighth brother is currently in a state of panic and will only defend, not take the initiative to attack. Although the eighth brother Yang Quan had a blood warrior as his retainer, his mother's family was only a second-class force, so the support they could provide was limited. During the day, he hadn't been able to win over many followers, so naturally he didn't dare take the initiative to attack others. On top of that, he had a blood warrior as his retainer, so even if there was only one, it wouldn't be easy to break through, so no one had any ideas about attacking him on the first night. As for second brother and sixth brother, they should have taken their people to another place that is easier to attack. So here, it's only us two brothers. Hearing this, Yang Kai raised his brow and sneered meaningfully. Second brother Yang Zhao and sixth brother Yang Xin had gone to another place that was easy to attack tonight, so besides his own house, there was no other place. He just didn't know what the situation there was now. As Yang Kong spoke, Yang Ying couldn't help smiling. Fifth brother's news is truly fast, little seven admires you. Yang Kong shook his head and said, let's not talk about this for now, let's discuss how to deal with third brother first. What does fifth brother think? How about we each take one of the people and the flag? Yang Kong asked with a smile, not putting his third brother Yang Tai in his eyes at all, as if he wanted to divide up some kind of supplies with Yang Ying. Yang Tai's face couldn't help going pale while the other Duanmu family masters also wore angry looks. Yang Ying smiled and shook his head, calmly saying, fifth brother, don't blame little seven for having such a big appetite. I want third brother's people, but I also want his flag. Yang Kong was stunned and couldn't help sneering, seventh brother, your appetite is really big. Then let's see if you have the ability to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. Yang Ying's smile also slowly converged and his expression became cold. The two brothers stared at each other for a moment before the surrounding 1,000 meters suddenly became silent, the air seemingly stagnant. When the wind and rain came, the city was about to be destroyed. Shio. More than 10 powerful spiritual energy senses suddenly burst forth, and as if they had discussed this beforehand, the immortal ascension boundary masters brought by Yang Kong and Yang Ying simultaneously released the soul skills they had been accumulating for a long time. As the invisible forces collided, some people let out muffled groans and were forced to retreat a few steps while others took advantage of the situation and fiercely attacked. The brilliance of various martial skills and artifacts blossomed at this moment, dazzling the onlookers. Tang Yuxian flew to the side to protect Yang Kong from the whirlpool of battle while the other blood warrior brought by Yang Ying also flew to the other side to protect him. The two Yang family young lords stared at each other from a few dozen meters away, their cold gazes colliding, creating a series of sparks. As key figures in the inheritance war, unless it was absolutely necessary, Yang Kong and Yang Ying wouldn't take action themselves. Firstly, doing so was dangerous, and secondly, their strength wasn't high, so even if they took action, it wouldn't affect the overall situation. The blood warriors guarding them were also restrained by the Yang family's rules and couldn't take the initiative to attack. The blood warriors were only responsible for passive counterattacks. When no one attacked them or the Yang family young lords, even if the situation was critical, they had to stand by and watch. The strength of the cultivator brought by Yang Kong and Yang Ying was roughly the same, so when they clashed, they were actually evenly matched. As the hosts, Yang Tai and the Duanmu family cultivator were relaxed, no one actually came to find trouble with them. After observing for a while, Yang Tai coldly snorted, "Did you really think this third brother wasn't prepared at all? You're looking down on me too much. Release the arrows." ****** On top of the surrounding walls and roofs, a number of figures appeared, each of them holding a powerful bow that glowed with a brilliant light. The shape of these bows was quite arrogant, at a glance it was obvious they were high-grade artifacts. When the man saw Yang Kai's face, he couldn't help but become slightly dazed. By the time he regained his composure, the flag in his hand had already been snatched away by Yang Kai. You! The master's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. He naturally recognized the 8 Yang family young lords who were participating in the inheritance war, but he had never imagined that he would meet the youngest one here. For a moment, he felt like he was dreaming, wondering if his eyes were playing tricks on him. However, Yang Kai didn't give him any time to breathe, continuing to entangle with the 1,000-blossoming blood begonia while he leapt into the air and tossed the flag into the air. In the dark night, a golden light flashed and a pair of claws stretched out, accurately grabbing Yang Kai's flag and disappearing in an instant. The sound of flapping wings rang out and gradually disappeared into the distance. It was the golden feather eagle. Are you an idiot? The Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th Stage Master in Yang Ying's camp couldn't help cursing. In his opinion, the opponent who had just been holding the flag had clearly been snatched away without any resistance, so how could he understand the confusion and shock in his opponent's heart? It's him, he. The man knew he was in the wrong and didn't know how to explain for a while. On the other hand, Tang Yuxian, who was guarding Yang Kong, couldn't help but frown as she stared in the direction the golden feather eagle disappeared, a strange light flashing across her beautiful eyes as a smile appeared on her face. When she turned to look at Yang Kai again, Tang Yuxian's eyes softened. Chapter 427. The flag that should have belonged to Yang Kong had suddenly been snatched away, causing the originally joyful Yang Kong to be slightly startled, his mood instantly turning sour. Moreover, after the person who had snatched the flag flew up and down, the flag had already disappeared. Yang Kong couldn't help gritting his teeth and cursing, but he didn't dare to act rashly. That extremely powerful spiritual energy belonging to a peak Immortal Ascension Boundary Master still shrouded the surrounding area. Not only did Yang Kong not dare to move, but everyone present also didn't dare to move. Such a master hiding nearby was a deterrent to anyone. They didn't know who this person was, but they all knew in their hearts that this master was not one of them. Because of this deterrent spiritual energy, Rong Tai and the several Duanmu family cultivator, who were originally in a precarious situation, became much more relaxed at this moment. The Wind and Cloud dual guards, on the other hand, didn't have any scruples, rushing into the battlefield, swinging left and right, attacking all the people brought by Yang Kong. Although the people brought by Yang Ying felt that these two were unfamiliar faces, they didn't think much about it, allowing the Wind and Cloud dual guards to act wantonly. After a few exchanges, the Wind and Cloud dual guards arrived in front of Yang Tai. Seeing that the situation was not right, Yang Kong couldn't help shouting, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and capture my third brother." The flag was already gone. If they still couldn't capture this person, then this time they would really go for wool and come home shorn. Yang Kang's shout finally caused those who were on guard to take action. Yang Ying also shouted, "Stop them for me." The cultivator on both sides once again engaged in a fierce battle. They were entangled with each other. The Wind and Cloud dual guards approached Yang Tai, and in the midst of the chaos, they actually received the help of several cultivators from Yang Ying's camp, successfully forcing back the 2 Duanmu family masters guarding Yang Tai and grabbing him. Yang Ying laughed and shouted to the Wind and Cloud dual guards, "You too, please send him over." "Yes." The Wind and Cloud dual guards quickly responded. "Hurry up." "Good." Saying so, he casually threw Yang Tai over. Yang Ying was taken aback, not understanding what was going on. The person who had just snatched the flag actually jumped into the air to intercept Yang Tai, carrying him and flying away. At the same time, the Wind and Cloud dual guards also flew into the air. They disappeared into the night sky in a streak of green light. "Fifth brother, seventh brother. Thank you." A familiar voice came from afar. Both Yang Kong and Yang Ying's faces suddenly became ashen as they cried out in alarm, "Ninth brother." When the crowd of onlookers heard this, they immediately went into an uproar. Ninth brother. That was the youngest young master of the Yang family, Yang Kai. Just now, when Yang Kong was speaking, he had also said that Yang Zhao and Yang Xin had brought people to Yang Kai's mansion tonight to cause trouble, and judging from Yang Kai's performance today, he didn't have much help. Even if his situation was better than Yang Kai's, it wouldn't be much better. At this time, shouldn't that ninth brother Yang Kai be in a terrible fix in his own mansion? Why would he appear here to reap the benefits? Moreover, he seemed to have only brought 2 helpers with him. This person was so bold. Without knowing why, when they heard Yang Kang's exclamation and felt the incredulity in his tone, the crowd felt a burst of excitement. It seemed that this kind of unexpected battle was the kind of show they had been looking forward to. In the blink of an eye, Yang Kai had already flown 1,000 meters away with Yang Tai, his Yuan Chi fully activated as his figure flashed, leaving behind a long trail of afterimages. It really is the little lord. Tang Yuxian smiled and muttered to herself. Just now, she had seen a golden light in the dark night. Tang Yuxian had some doubts about whether it was the golden feather eagle, but now hearing Yang Kai's voice, she immediately confirmed her suspicions. Did you already know? Yang Kong glanced at her unhappily. Tang Yuxian's expression remained serious as she shook her head. It was just a guess, I wasn't sure. Yang Kang's expression became ugly, but he didn't say anything more. He knew that Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian both had a very respectful attitude towards Yang Kai. This time, he had deliberately chosen these 2 as his retainers for the inheritance war, firstly because their strength was really good, and secondly because he wanted to disgust Yang Kai. However, at this critical juncture, he had been the one to disgust Yang Kai. Both his flag and his people had been snatched away by Yang Kai. He and Yang Ying had fought a life and death battle and had lost so many helpers, but in the end they had obtained nothing. The depression in his heart could be imagined. Chase! Yang Kong grit his teeth and roared, immediately flying off. Yang Ying's expression was also gloomy as he followed without a word. The 2 groups of people left together, leaving behind only the ruins of Yang Tai's mansion and the 4 or 5 injured Duanmu family masters. In order to chase down Yang Kai and recapture Yang Tai, the 2 of them had no intention of dealing with the remaining Duanmu family masters. The first battle of the night was actually a sandpiper and clam fight, a fisherman taking advantage of the situation. This was greatly beyond everyone's expectations. The onlookers still wanted to see more, so they quickly followed. These people were also quite interested in the daring 9th brother Yang Kai who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. They couldn't help wondering what kind of person this youngest young master Yang was and how he was able to act so boldly. Faintly, these people didn't want Yang Kai to be caught. With the existence of such a person, the inheritance war would be much more interesting and exciting. With the ground covered in blood and corpses, the 4 or 5 Duanmu family masters who had survived glanced at each other and smiled bitterly, slowly sitting down and adjusting their breathing. They had done their best. The Duanmu family had sent a total of 30 to 40 people this time, but after this battle, only 5 of them had survived. This was a loss to the Duanmu family's strength, but it would also strengthen the Duanmu family's reputation. In the future, when people talked about this inheritance war, they would only praise the Duanmu family for their loyalty and uprightness, knowing full well that they would lose but still sending people to protect them without hesitation. Such a family was bound to have people befriending them. So in the long run, the Duanmu family not only didn't lose anything. Instead, they benefited. Yang Kong and Yang Ying led their own people to chase after Yang Kai. At first, they could still see his shadow, but as time passed, even his shadow disappeared. Many immortal Ascension Boundary Masters released their divine senses in an attempt to detect Yang Kai's movements, but these divine senses were like stones sinking into the sea, completely useless. Yang Kai and Yang Tai had disappeared. It was as if they had disappeared into thin air. The results reported by their pursuers made Yang Kong and Yang Ying's expressions become more and more ugly. Your ninth brother's speed is too shocking. Gao Rangfeng muttered in horror. Carrying a person in his hand, he was actually able to leave so many immortal Ascension Boundary Masters behind. Such speed was simply incredible. Regardless of his speed. Under the divine senses of so many immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, how could he hide his whereabouts? Nora. Kong Zhan shook his head, somewhat unable to understand. Yang Ying's eyes flashed as he stared towards Tang Yuxian, chuckling lightly. Fifth brother, I heard that your blood warrior's attainments in soul skills are far higher than anyone else's. Was she unable to detect it with her divine sense? Listening to Yang Ying's words, Yang Kong also quickly turned his eyes to Tang Yuxian, full of questions. Tang Yuxian shook her head lightly and said, I've tried. I couldn't detect the little lord's movements. Yang Kong frowned, quickly saying, Yuxian, I know you and ninth brother have a good personal relationship, but don't forget, this is the inheritance war. You are a blood warrior of the Yang family's blood warrior hall. Tang Yuxian's expression became serious as she said, Fifth young lord, I understand what you're saying, but I also ask you to understand that blood warriors always distinguish between public and private interests. Since you used your merits to exchange with the family for me and Tu Feng to serve as your retainers. Before you fail, Tu Feng and I will do our best to assist you. Listening to her say this, Yang Kong didn't continue to press the issue, nodding slightly. That's not what I meant. Since you can't detect him, ninth brother must have some kind of powerful master helping him hide his whereabouts. You mean the master of that divine sense? Yang Ying suddenly remembered the terrifying and strange spiritual energy he had just sensed. It should be, with such a powerful master helping him, it is indeed possible for him to do so. Yang Kang's brow furrowed as he muttered to himself, strange, how could ninth brother have such a powerful helper? In the inheritance war, all the great forces in the world participated. Among them, the strongest master the 8 great families had ever dispatched was an immortal Ascension Boundary 5th stage master. As for the other first-class forces, they generally wouldn't send a peak immortal Ascension Boundary master to participate. Such masters were usually relatively old and wouldn't be willing to disturb the balance of the inheritance war. On top of that, these families couldn't afford to lose such a master. Therefore, the strongest master of first-class force could send was an immortal Ascension Boundary 8th stage master. Of course, this fact was not absolute. As the inheritance war heated up, peak immortal Ascension Boundary masters were likely to appear on the battlefield. As for the second-class forces, there were very few immortal Ascension Boundary 8th stage masters. For example, in Blood Battle Gang, only Sect Master Hu Man was an immortal Ascension Boundary 8th stage master. As the leader of the Blood Battle Gang, how could he participate? As for Storm Hall, there wasn't even a single immortal Ascension Boundary 8th stage master. Even the sect master Xiao Ruohan only had a 7th stage cultivation. Therefore, the masters of second-class force could send out were mostly immortal Ascension Boundary 6th or 7th stage masters. As for third-class forces, it was impossible for them to have too many masters. The support they brought was much smaller than that of first-class and second-class forces. In the inheritance war, people would die. If too many masters died, those forces wouldn't be able to afford it and would likely never be able to recover from this setback. Because of this, no matter which force participated in the inheritance war, the number of people they sent out was limited. As for a peak immortal Ascension Boundary master, none of the young lords had one yet. If Yang Kai really had such a powerful ally, Yang Kong and Yang Ying would be in grave danger, so how could they have time to think about anything else? Ninth brother really made a big profit this time. Yang Ink shook his head and smiled bitterly. The flag had been snatched by him, and now even Yang Tai was in his hands. Each person and flag could be exchanged for a lot of useful materials from the family, even artifacts, martial skills, and secret arts. These things could be used to equip his followers, allowing them to become stronger and stronger. He'll be able to hold on until tonight. Yang Kong coldly snorted. At this time, the battlefield over there should also be a great deal of chaos, right? Ninth brother didn't stay in the mansion and actually ran out on his own. Although this was a risky move, in Yang Kang's opinion, the gains weren't worth the losses. Chapter 428. Unable to catch up with Yang Kai, unable to find any trace of Yang Kai, and even more fearful of the mysterious peak Immortal Ascension Boundary Master, Yang Kong and Yang Ying both wore depressed expressions. After a moment of silence, Kong Zhan of the Kong family suddenly smiled and said, "The two of you, do you want to go to your ninth brother's house now?" Yang Kong and Yang Ying both glanced at him suspiciously, but soon their eyes lit up. And Yang Kai had run out on his own, so there was no one guarding his house. Moreover, that mysterious master had also been brought out by him, so the defenses there must be empty. Moreover, Yang Zhao and Yang Xin were also there. If they went there now, the four of them together would be enough to flatten Yang Kai's house. Looking at each other indifferently, the two brothers both saw the opportunity in this situation. But before they could consider the pros and cons, Gao Rangfeng of the Gao family shook his head and said, "That's not right. I think the two of you should hurry back to your own houses. If there really is a peak Immortal Ascension Boundary Master as Yang Kai's ally, I'm afraid your houses will be in danger right now." Hearing this, Yang Kong and Yang Ying's expressions changed greatly. They had only seen the opportunity to defeat others, but had completely ignored their own situation. This time, in order to eat the first piece of meat, the two of them had brought a lot of allies with them. In addition to leaving behind a blood warrior to guard their flags, they didn't have many powerful forces to guard their respective houses. At this time, if Yang Kai really took advantage of this situation, they would be defeated unjustly. Thinking so, the two of them no longer had any ideas about Yang Kai and quickly led their respective forces back. 10 kilometers outside War City, Yang Kai put down Yang Tai in his hand. Not bothering to seal his meridians in Yuan Qi, Yang Kai lifted his hat and called out, "Third brother." "Ninth brother's methods are quite good," Yang Tai said with a look of admiration. Yang Kai shook his head and said, "I just took advantage of their loophole." Tonight, no one would have thought that he would dare to come out and cause trouble, so when Yang Kong and Yang Ying were fighting each other, they were completely unprepared. If not for this, how could Yang Kai so easily capture the flag? As long as they were slightly on guard, Yang Kai would not have succeeded this time. No matter what. Now that third brother has fallen into your hands, it's all thanks to you. Yang Tai looked at Yang Kai indifferently and said, "Rather than being captured by those two, why don't you just stay here? Third brother would rather let you take advantage of me. At least you didn't take the initiative to attack me. Third brother, you're being too serious." Yang Kai sensed his indifference and naturally knew that he was a little depressed because he was the first to be eliminated. "You can go back to the central capital, there's nothing for you to do here." Yang Tai was stunned and frowned. "What do you mean?" "It's nothing special, just taking the flag is enough." Saying so, without waiting for Yang Tai to say anything else, Yang Kai's figure flickered and returned to War City. Standing in place for a long time, Yang Tai's expression gradually eased. Frowning, Yang Tai stared in the direction Yang Kai disappeared, a faint trace of gratitude appearing on his face. Yang Kai not taking him to the family to exchange for supplies was tantamount to giving him some face. Yang Tai hadn't achieved much in these past few years, nor had he done anything earth-shattering. His performance had always been mediocre, but as a young lord, his pride was still ingrained in his bones. If it weren't for this, he wouldn't have chosen to die tonight and would have taken the initiative to surrender. With the help of the Chiu family's Chiu Ziruo and the support he had gathered, he was able to resist Yang Zhao for a short time. On the other hand, in Yang Kai's mansion, besides the central capital wolf, only Chiu Yimeng and Xiang Tianshao were standing next to him. In addition, Chu Gao Yi stood like an iron tower in front of the main hall, motionless. Ying Jiu's whereabouts were unknown. However, everyone present knew that this shadowy blood warrior was lurking in the darkness, ready to launch a thunderous strike at any moment. Separated by some distance, Chiu Yimeng and Chiu Ziruo's eyes met. The former smiled slightly, her smile full of confidence, while the latter's eyes couldn't help flashing slightly before quickly returning to his former self, seemingly not wanting to show any timidity in front of his elder sister. At the same time, Xiang Chu and Xiang Tianshao also stared at each other, one expressionless, the atmosphere suddenly becoming a little tense. "Sixth brother, what do you want to do with little brother Kai?" Yang Zhao suddenly asked with a smile. Yang Shen also smiled. "If second brother wants to eat the meat, little brother will drink the soup. Second brother can't eat all of it alone, right?" "Naturally." Yang Zhao slowly shook his head, hesitating for a moment before saying, "Since that's the case, second brother will take little brother Kai's flag, we'll split it evenly. As long as second brother is in charge." Yang Shen grinned meaningfully, quite satisfied with Yang Zhao's proposal. Intentionally or unintentionally, he glanced towards Xiang Chu and Nanxing and couldn't help curling his lips, a trace of disdain flashing across his eyes. The grievances between Yang Kai and them had already spread today. It wasn't difficult to explain why Yang Zhao chose little brother Kai instead of the flag. The Xiang and Nan families joining Yang Zhao's camp had greatly increased his strength, so he naturally wanted to express his gratitude to his allies. Capturing Yang Kai was tantamount to losing face, so Xiang Chu and Nanxing should be satisfied and would only serve him more loyally in the future. "Hey, you two, aren't you tired of standing there talking? Why don't you come down?" Huixing Chen suddenly called out casually. Yang Zhao smiled and shook his head. "No need, brother Hua, let my little brother Kai come out and speak, I don't want to embarrass him too much." "Yang Kai." Hua Stars grinned meaningfully. "He doesn't seem to be at home." "Not at home." Yang Zhao frowned, apparently thinking that Hua Stars was trying to fool him, asking curiously, "If he's not at home at this time, where would he be?" "How would I know? Maybe he's somewhere enjoying himself, heh heh." Hua Stars grinned as he stood up and opened his folding fan, pretending to be a romantic. "In any case, he's not at home. If you don't believe me, you can ask Chiu Yimeng, she should know where Yang Kai is." Yang Zhao couldn't help turning his eyes to Chiu Yimeng, who smiled lightly and tucked her hair behind her ear, asking softly, "If I say he's not at home, would second young lord believe me?" Hearing her speak so ambiguously, Yang Zhao couldn't help but frown, subconsciously thinking that Yang Kai was playing some kind of trick. But soon, Yang Zhao's expression became firm and he said loudly, "I don't believe you. Tonight was such a sensitive time, how could Yang Kai not be at home? He must be hiding somewhere, not daring to show himself. Then second young lord can search this place and see if you can find him." Chiu Yimeng smiled lightly, but in her heart she was cursing him. Yang Kai had indeed said hello to her before going out, but before she could agree, he had disappeared. Where he had gone or what he was going to do, she had no idea. No need. How long can his mad tyrant blood skill last? Yang Zhao asked. Even though he was reluctant to answer, the blood warrior next to him whispered, about half an hour, his vitality will be completely overdrawn. Then we wait. We'll wait half an hour. Yang Zhao made up his mind. The mansion fell into a brief period of peace, only Wuxia once again sitting back in his armchair, humming an unknown tune while drinking and making merry, his leisurely appearance drawing everyone's attention. Yang Zhao was furious. Time passed slowly, and the feeling of waiting was torturous. After half an hour, Yang Zhao nodded, it's about time. Yang Shen's spirits rose. A trace of decisiveness appeared on his face as he said, Brother Qiu, this time let your two Qiu family elders go up as well. I don't believe we can't win back the flag. Qiu Ziruo heard this and smiled, as sixth young lord commands. Saying so, he signaled to the two Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th Stage Qiu family elders and they both stepped forward. Before they could move though, Qiu Yimeng suddenly said, Brother, if I were you, I wouldn't play around with their lives. Your decision is too reckless. Qiu Ziruo frowned and sneered, Elder sister, don't try to be mysterious. Yang Kai is destined to be eliminated tonight. You've always been good at reading people. But this time, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. With so many of us here, how can you resist? Stubborn fool. Qiu Yimeng shook her head in disappointment and no longer said anything. Yang Shen waited for the siblings to finish speaking before waving his hand. All of you go up, split up half of you to entangle that Chu Gao Yi, the other half get me the flag. With a series of shuffling sounds, more than a dozen figures flew out. Half of them were Immortal Ascension Boundary cultivators, the strongest of which was an Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage cultivator while the rest were not weak. Among the dozen or so people, the Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage cultivator led 4 or 5 others to surround Chu Gao Yi, who had been standing motionless. None of them made a move and simply surrounded him. Even though they knew that he was seriously injured, these first-class cultivators didn't dare to take the initiative to attack the blood warriors. Chu Gao Yi was like an ancient mountain, standing motionless, only glancing over at them indifferently. The rest of the people rushed to the main hall and rushed towards the man who had just died, wanting to take back the flag in his hand. These masters all had excited looks on their faces, as if victory was already in sight. Yingjiu should have no power to attack at this moment, which meant that this flag would belong to whoever obtained it. Taking back the flag would be a great merit to Yang Xin, so what was there to worry about not receiving a reward? 7 or 8 hands reached out to grab the flag. At that moment, a faint light burst out from the darkness and a thin figure suddenly appeared. This person held 2 daggers in his hands that glowed with a dark light. While everyone was excited, a cold light flashed from these daggers. This thin figure blurred and suddenly split into more than a dozen copies, each of them cold and gloomy, each of them decisive in their killing intent. Shadow dance kill. Screams and screams rang out as blood splashed out. How could the masters who had tried to snatch the flag resist the assassination of an Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage blood warrior? In a flash, 3 of them were knocked to the ground. The others quickly retreated, but still couldn't avoid the fate of being injured. In an instant, the dust settled. Yingjiu stood alone, holding his daggers, like a ghost in the dark, standing at the entrance of the main hall, reaching out and retrieving the flag from the dead man's hand, tossing it back into the main hall. His figure quickly blurred and disappeared into the air without a trace. He didn't use his mad tyrant blood skill. Yang Zhao's eyes narrowed as he exclaimed. The characteristics of a blood warrior after using his mad tyrant blood skill were very obvious, their vitality would glow red, but Yingjiu didn't show any such signs. Second brother. Yang Shen's eyes went bloodshot. Just now, he had mistakenly believed in Yang Zhao's judgment, causing his subordinates to suffer heavy casualties. Yang Zhao glanced at him coldly and frowned. Second brother made a mistake in his judgment. Then my losses, ha. Yang Shen also knew that it was unrealistic to ask Yang Zhao to compensate him for his losses, hating himself for not being more cautious and trusting others so easily. Chapter 430. In front of the central hall, Ying Jiao had appeared like a ghost, killing 3 people before quickly disappearing. Yang Shen's subordinates no longer dared to act rashly, all of them turning back one by one, their faces filled with relief as they cast inquiring looks towards Yang Shen. Yang Shen's face was gloomy to the extreme, his stomach full of annoyance, no longer daring to issue orders casually. Yang Zhao, on the other hand, was frowning as he silently cursed. Ying Jiao hadn't used his mad tyrant blood skill, but he was still so fierce. With his current injuries, this shouldn't be the case. Before coming here, Yang Kai had clearly heard that although Ying Jiao was an elite of the Blood Warrior Hall, any Immortal Ascension Boundary 6-stage master would be able to easily defeat him. Had he really fully recovered from his injuries? Or had he used some kind of special method to suppress his injuries? Yang Zhao was confused, secretly speculating, but still couldn't help feeling curious. Looking at Chu Gao Yi again, from beginning to end, he hadn't said a word, his body hadn't moved at all, except for the occasional movement of his eyes. This blood warrior was no different from a corpse. However, even after being surrounded by 4 or 5 people, his expression hadn't changed at all, remaining as indifferent as water. Yang Zhao suddenly felt a headache coming on. Although the strength of the people he and Yang Shen had brought wasn't weak, if they wanted to snatch the flag from under the noses of 2 blood warriors, they would have to take a great risk. The biggest question now was how strong these 2 blood warriors in Yang Kai's house were. If they were just playing tricks, Yang Zhao was confident he could eliminate Yang Kai tonight, but if they weren't, after hesitating for a long time, Yang Zhao coldly snorted and said, "Sixth brother, it seems you can't handle this flag." Yang Shen's face went cold, unable to refute. "Since that's the case, second brother will help you," Yang Zhao stared down and said. Tonight's opportunity was rare, Yang Zhao didn't want to miss it. Even though he knew his decision was somewhat inappropriate, he couldn't help feeling restless. "You can help me, but as for the ownership of the flag..." Yang Shen had suffered a loss this time but had learned his lesson and knew to ask clearly. "We'll talk about it when the time comes." How could Yang Zhao accept a loss? Right now, he didn't know where Yang Kai was, so if he hastily agreed to hand over the flag, he might not be able to obtain anything. Yang Shen frowned, not bothering with Yang Zhao's decision to go back on his word, pondering for a long time before nodding, "All right." Now that 4 of them had died at once, Yang Shen couldn't wait to win a victory to salvage the situation. "Good, let's go," Yang Zhao chuckled and waved his hand. Behind him, the 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th Stage Masters brought by the Yi families Yi Axai and Rou, as well as the 2 elders from the Xiang and Nan families all set out. Yang Shen also signaled to the people he had brought with him. In an instant, the 2 brothers joined forces. More than a dozen mental travel realm experts approached the middle hall. At the same time, there was a group of Yuan Qi cultivators. Hey, let me make things clear first. You guys can go back, but don't drag me in. I'm just here to watch the fun." Huastars shouted and took a few steps back. Qiu Yimeng sneered and kicked him in the ass, sending him flying forward while she and Xiang Tianshao took a step forward. The people from the Autumn Rain Hall and Xiang Tianshao suddenly appeared in the surroundings like ghosts. There were quite a few of them, but not many of them were presentable. The high realm experts brought by Yang Zhao and Yang Shen didn't show any fear and quickly approached the middle hall. Chu Gao Yi, who had remained motionless until now, suddenly roared as a violent yuan qi burst forth from his body. An invisible shockwave spread out in all directions as his voice rang like thunder in everyone's ears. If you want to enter the middle hall, you'll have to pass through me first. Full of qi, there was no trace of injury on his face. Yang Zhao and Yang Shen's subordinates had already been alerted by Ying Zhou, who was hiding nearby, so when they heard Chu Gaoyi's roar, it was hard to say which one of them had the worst mental fortitude and actually sent out a ray of light towards Chu Gaoyi. Chu Gaoyi blocked it and grinned. Because of the Blood Warriors' family rules, they were only responsible for passive counterattacks. Before others attacked them, they couldn't take any action, but now that they had been attacked, Chu Gaoyi could naturally act without any scruples. His figure suddenly transformed into a streak of blue light and in the next moment appeared in the middle of a large group of enemies. In the Blood Warrior Hall, Chu Gaoyi was known as the one who dared to risk his life the most. He was most proficient in short bursts of power. In the time it would take to burn a stick of incense, he could release all of his yuan qi and spiritual energy into his body without leaving a single trace behind. During this time, basically no one could withstand his attack. A burst of spiritual energy visible to the naked eye burst out from Chu Gaoyi's mind as a tyrannical soul skill suddenly exploded all around him. Forming a series of hand seals, Chu Gaoyi unleashed a series of exquisite and lethal martial skills. In an instant, everyone was thrown off their feet and thrown into chaos. No one had expected that this blood warrior, who should have been seriously injured, would dare to rush into the crowd and launch an all-out attack without any intention of defending himself. In just 3 breaths of time, someone had fallen to the ground and died while another was sent flying, exploding into a cloud of dust mid-air. Yang Zhao, Yang Shen, Xiang Chu, Nan Xing, and Qiu Ziruo's eyes suddenly trembled. None of them seemed to have expected that the outbreak of battle this time would be so ferocious. On the other hand, the 2 blood warriors who had followed the 2 young family brothers glanced at each other and smiled knowingly. With their eyesight, they naturally saw that Chu Gaoyi had fully recovered from his injuries, otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to display such powerful combat strength. How had he recovered? When they saw him during the day, he was obviously the same as before, so how could he have undergone such a huge change in a single day? The 2 blood warriors couldn't understand this. Chu Gaoyi's ferocity and valiance had truly frightened his enemies. After 2 people died, the rest of the blood warriors couldn't help feeling a little nervous, none of them daring to get too close to him. What are you afraid of? With so many people, can't we take down a single blood warrior? Which patriarch would take the lead and disregard his own safety? If this were the case, then all the families in this world would probably have to change patriarchs every few days. A patriarch had to act like a patriarch. A patriarch had to sit behind the scenes, coordinate the overall situation, and plan strategies. The one who rushed to the front was a general, not a commander. Staring at the figure of Xiang Tianshao, Xiang Chu's eyes gradually became gloomy, a cold light flashing across them. You go too. Qiu Yimeng turned to look at the smiling Huastars. Me too. Huastar's eyes widened. What nonsense are you spouting? You're the Hua family's young master, do you think they'll dare kill you? Qiu Yimeng shouted, grabbing Huastar's clothes and throwing him into the chaotic battlefield. Huastars let out a strange cry as he fell from the sky like a meteor, smashing into the ground and creating a large crater. Qiu Yimeng sneered, no one dares to kill you, at most they'll just injure you. Bitch. Huixing Chen's legs were numb for a long time before he gradually regained consciousness. Gritting his teeth, he cursed under his breath before raising his arms and shouting, don't call me that, I'll tell you, I am Huixing Chen, I am the sole heir of the Hua family. If anyone dares to touch me, I'll kill them. Yang Zhao smiled lightly and said meaningfully, I naturally know your abilities and I'm not looking down on you, it's just that you're looking down on this young Lord Hua. Yi Xianro looked stunned and hesitated. You mean he? Yang Zhao chuckled. Before the Yang family young lords returned to the central capital, there were 3 most famous people in the younger generation, and Huastars was ranked 3rd. Do you think he only became famous because of his lust? Xianro, you underestimate the heritage of the Hua family too much. Yi Xianro's expression became serious and she nodded gently. Second young master's words make sense. Perhaps it's because I don't like this person that I underestimated him. While the 2 of them were talking, Xiang Chu, who was standing next to them, quietly glanced towards one of the Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters below. This Immortal Ascension Boundary Master understood and quietly left the besieging of Chu Gaoyi's group, intentionally or unintentionally moving towards Xiang Tianshao, who was fighting a peak Yuan Qi cultivator. The battlefield was chaotic, so no one paid attention to such a small detail. Even Xiang Tianshao himself didn't notice. A moment later, this Immortal Ascension Boundary Master arrived not far from Xiang Tianshao, a cold light flashing across his eyes as he sent out a burst of invisible spiritual energy. At that moment, the Hua family young lord, for some unknown reason, staggered a few steps to the left. These few critical steps had allowed him to block Xiang Tianzhao's path. His spiritual energy rushed into the Hua family young lord's mind and exploded. Huastar's body suddenly released a blue halo. This was the soul-type artifact he carried with him, which played a defensive role. Seeing this blue halo, Huastars glanced around suspiciously and happened to meet the eyes of the Immortal Ascension Boundary Master who had attacked Xiang Tianshao. Seemingly reacting, Huastars couldn't help grinning. You actually dared to use a soul skill to attack this young master, your courage isn't small. Fortunately, this young master has a soul-type artifact on him, otherwise, wouldn't you have succeeded? The man didn't expect such a change to occur and was so shocked that his soul almost flew out of his body. Just now, someone had accidentally bumped into Huastars and was slapped in public. Now that he had used a soul skill to attack this young master, how could he have a good end? In an instant, cold sweat dripped from his forehead as he quickly waved his hand and explained, Young Lord Hua, I didn't mean to. Huastars' expression became fierce as he ground his teeth. You didn't mean to. Could it be you didn't mean to? As he spoke, he threw a slap at Zhang Xian. The young master instinctively raised his hand to block Huastars' slap, but after blocking it, he realized that something was wrong, his expression becoming strange and brilliant. Young Lord Hua, Master, can you please not lower yourself to my level? You don't need to say anything. Huastars sneered. You're from the Xiang family, right? If this young master doesn't cripple you today, I'll call you Xiang Stars from now on. Stand there and don't move. How could the young master dare to move? He couldn't wait to directly slap himself unconscious. If he hadn't instinctively blocked that slap just now, allowing Huastars to vent his anger, he probably wouldn't have ended up like this. His mouth was filled with bitterness, as if he had eaten a bitter pill. Huastars turned around and searched the battlefield. He didn't know which corpse he had found a sharp weapon. Waving it a few times, he slowly walked back and stood in front of the young master, his eyes sharp as knives, flashing a cold light as he sized him up. Speak for yourself. Should I chop you to death, or should I chop you to death? Even if this young master's strength was not bad, at this moment, he couldn't help feeling a little scared. Quickly turning his eyes to Xiang Chu, his eyes filled with pleading. Xiang Chu smiled helplessly, although he was the future heir of the Xiang family. The Xiang family was only a first-class force, how could they be qualified to challenge the Hua family? He didn't dare to provoke a rogue like Huastars. Seeing Xiang Chu's bitter smile, the young master also knew that he would not be able to escape today, so he grit his teeth and said, "Young Lord Hua, you decide for yourself." "Ha! You have quite the backbone." Hua Stars was very surprised, seemingly not having expected this young master to not resist at all. Just as he finished speaking, the sharp weapon in his hand flashed a cold light. With a muffled groan, the young master standing in front of Hua Stars had one of his arms chopped off, blood gushing out like a fountain. "Humph, since you still have some backbone, I'll cripple your arm." The young master was in unbearable pain, but he still didn't dare resist, circulating his yuan qi to slow down the flow of blood, his face pale as he grit his teeth and said, "Many thanks, young Lord Hua, for not killing me." Hua Stars casually said, "The Xiang family should have one of their arms cut off, and that Nan family should have done the same. If you don't get out of this inheritance war and return home, this young master will cut off all your arms and rename you the One-Arm Xiang family, One-Arm Nan family, wahahaha." Laughing wildly, Xiang Chu and Nanxing's faces both became extremely pale. Hua Stars was obviously ridiculing the fact that the four masters from their families had been forced by Yang Kai to cripple their own arms. For both the Xiang and Nan families, this was a great shame. Whether it was Xiang Chu or Nanxing, both of them couldn't help clenching their fists at this moment. This time, they had followed Yang Zhao to find trouble with Yang Kai, but after fighting for so long, Yang Kai still hadn't appeared. On the contrary, their camp had been completely destroyed by Hua Stars' shameless methods, even cutting off the arms of some of their masters. This was even more embarrassing than slapping their faces. "Second young lord, please uphold justice for us." Xiang Chu grit his teeth and whispered to Yang Zhao, his tone filled with an unforgettable hatred. He was truly enraged. Yang Zhao couldn't help but frown. To be honest, he didn't want to intervene in this battle right now. First of all, Chu Gao Yi was still madly attacking, and the raging energy fluctuations made every corner of the battlefield unsafe. Secondly, Yang Kai still hadn't shown himself, so he didn't know what his little brother, who had been hiding his strength and pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, was planning. However, the Xiang and Nan families were a big help to him. If he didn't do anything at this time, it would only disappoint them. After hesitating for a moment, Yang Zhao nodded, "Good, this young lord will meet him personally." Hearing him agree, both Xiang Chu and Nanxing couldn't help smiling. Chapter 432. Old Hua, be careful. Yang Zhao chuckled, gently reminding him before slowly lifting his foot and stamping it down. Suddenly, several strange lines appeared on the ground, as if there were giant earthworms wriggling beneath them. A terrifying energy burst forth from below, causing Hua Xingxing's expression to change. Earth Demon Dragon Art. A heaven-grade top-rank martial skill, Yang Zhao was able to clearly demonstrate its extraordinariness. Each of these Earth Fiend dragons was condensed from the soul of a fifth-order monster beast and stored in Yang Zhao's body, allowing him to use them flexibly when facing an enemy, often allowing him to catch them off guard and catch them off guard. Yang Zhao now had a total of 7 Earth Demon Dragons at his disposal. With this move, when facing enemies in the Yuan Qi realm, he could often defeat them without needing to move. Hua Xingxing's expression became dignified as he quickly retreated, using a mysterious footwork technique. With every step he took, a lotus flower bloomed beneath his feet, blocking and swallowing the Earth Demon Dragons one by one. Moon concealing lotus steps. Also a heaven-grade top-rank martial skill, this was a perfect match for Yang Zhao's Earth Demon Dragon Art. After retreating a total of 7 steps, Hua Xingxing paused in a panic and glanced over at Yang Zhao, wiping the sweat from his forehead as he chuckled, "Second young master, there's no need to be so ruthless, right? In any case, we've gone to the brothel together. Last time at the Spring Breeze Pavilion, you invited me. Don't talk nonsense." Yang Zhao couldn't help rolling his eyes, immediately coldly snorting, "You really are a wolf in sheep's clothing. What is second young master talking about? I don't understand." "Heh heh, since second young master wants to fight, this young master will gladly oblige." Saying so, Wuxia simultaneously released two different attribute energies. One was wind, the other was thunder. Wind howled, thunder roared, and lightning flashed. The two energies merged into one and condensed into a giant fish that shot towards Yang Zhao. Wind and Thunder Chi Fusion Seal. The Hua family's mysterious grade low-rank martial skill. The two forces of wind and thunder fused together, greatly increasing their power. Yang Zhao not only didn't show any signs of panic, but instead maintained a calm expression, not even showing any intention of dodging, only a calm smile remained on his face. "Capture him." Just as the wind and thunder combined chi seal was about to reach him, Yang Zhao suddenly ordered. Huastarz's expression changed drastically as he shouted, "Second master, this isn't appropriate, right?" Yang Zhao shrugged his shoulders and chuckled, "Evil people will be dealt with by evil people." While the two were talking, the blood warrior beside Yang Zhao had already stepped out. Blood warriors really couldn't take the initiative to attack due to the rules, but now that Huastars had attacked Yang Zhao, he could naturally counterattack. Yang Zhao had obviously intended to use his blood warriors to capture Huastars from the very beginning, which was why he had not evaded his martial skill. Just now, Starshua had used shameless methods to mess up the enemy's camp, but now Yang Zhao was using this almost cheating method to deal with him. The blood warrior simply waved his hand and the wind and thunder forces disappeared. Even if this martial skill was mysterious grade low rank, when displayed by Huastars, it couldn't affect the blood warrior in the slightest. After breaking the wind and thunder combined chi seal, the blood warrior didn't hesitate and grabbed towards Huastars. Grand Duke Hua's expression was one of shock, as if he hadn't expected Yang Zhao to be as shameless as himself. At that moment, two people suddenly appeared from nowhere, both of them wearing black tights. Even though they had been clamoring for revenge, seeing Yang Kai in person at this moment, they couldn't help feeling apprehensive. With Yang Zhao gone, Yang Shen naturally wasn't willing to stay any longer. His subordinates took the corpses of their companions and quickly disappeared into the night. The first night of the Inheritance War came to an end. In the Seal Temple, the 8 above Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, the Supreme Elders from the various great families, all slowly opened their eyes, gradually withdrawing their divine senses, their turbid eyes filled with amazement. When one's strength reached their level, when one reached their age, it was difficult for anything in this world to cause them any kind of emotional fluctuation. But tonight, someone had done just that. Chapter 433. After a moment of silence, a white-haired old man asked in an extremely weak voice, "That northwest corner, which one of the Yang family's children's mansions is it?" Someone hesitated for a moment before replying, "It seems to be the youngest one." Everyone nodded gently, praising, "Since ancient times, heroes have always come from the young." The Yang family's grand elder Yang Liting couldn't help laughing, his face filled with pride. Even though he no longer pursued anything in this world and his heart was as calm as still water, after spying on Yang Kai's performance tonight, he couldn't help feeling somewhat relieved, thinking that the Yang family had finally found a worthy successor. The Chiu family's grand elder, Chiu Daoren nodded, "His courage is great and his personal strength is impeccable, but in the Inheritance War, these 2 points alone are not enough to win. I just wonder if he has more helpers. Pay more attention to his performance. This time's Inheritance War seems to be much more exciting than in previous years." Everyone nodded, agreeing with this point of view. The 8 above Immortal Ascension Boundary Grand Elders were all ancestors of their respective families. Before nightfall, they had already sent out their divine senses to every corner of War City, monitoring the surrounding movements. Yang Kai's actions naturally couldn't escape their perception. However, there was one thing these 8 people couldn't understand. What method did he use to suddenly erupt with such a tyrannical and strange spiritual energy? With his current cultivation, it was impossible for him to possess a divine sense, so the only explanation was that this youngest Yang family young lord had a powerful soul-type artifact on him. This artifact was capable of releasing divine sense pressure, causing others to have illusions. Although all 8 of them showed interest in Yang Kai, that was the extent of it. These 8 old men would not participate in the inheritance war, nor would they interfere with it. If Yang Kai won, they would be happy to see it. If Yang Kai lost, they didn't care, including Yang Liting. They all shared the same thought. Almost immediately after the 8 old men withdrew their ocean-like divine senses, Yang Kai involuntarily let out a sigh of relief, the faint vigilance that had been hanging on his face finally converging. Glancing towards the Seal Temple, Yang Kai glanced over. He could sense that someone was watching him, and there was more than one person. However, those people's divine senses were so powerful that he was powerless to hide his whereabouts. Thinking of the rumors, Yang Kai quickly understood who was monitoring him. He had to break through to the immortal ascension boundary as soon as possible. With the protection of his knowledge sea and the assistance of the soul-warming lotus, Yang Kai believed he could conceal himself from the prying eyes of these 8 people. The feeling of being watched was very unpleasant, even though he knew that they wouldn't do anything. Yang Kai would not allow this to continue. He had too many secrets. Yang Kai. Chiu Yi Meng was overjoyed as she stood up from her chair and called out. Glancing down, Yang Kai ordered, "Get someone to clean up the corpses and blood here." The corpses on the ground all belonged to their own people. The enemy's corpses had already been taken away by them. The Chiu family's autumn rain hall had lost 6 people, and Xiang Tianshao had also lost 7 of his men. 13 corpses were laid out in front of the central hall, and the smell of blood filled the air. After he finished speaking, his figure flickered, landing in front of Chu Gao Yi. In this battle, Chu Gao Yi had single-handedly resisted the attacks of nearly 10 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, several of whom were Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th or 8th Stage Masters. In the future, I will pay you several times the compensation for your losses. So, live and wait. Chiu Yi Meng's expression suddenly brightened as she smiled lightly. These words were enough for her. Although the time she had spent with Yang Kai wasn't long, it wasn't short either, and she had never heard him promise anything. A man who didn't always keep his promises was definitely a man who kept his word. For a moment, Chiu Yi Meng was full of expectations for the future. She still remembered that Kai Yang had once said that what he needed were allies who would stand firmly by his side when he was in the midst of his most difficult times. He didn't need allies who wanted to get involved with him for their own benefits. But now, all of the people here had taken the initiative to come to his side when he was at his weakest. No matter what the reason was, they had obviously won his approval. In the inheritance war, the earlier you invested your capital, the greater the return you would receive. If you wanted to make friends with someone, you couldn't do so while they were still weak. Once they were strong, there would be no more opportunities. Chiu Yi Meng suddenly felt a little lucky that she had made the right choice. This man was really a man who could bring about miracles. After this battle, the mansion was seriously damaged. After the autumn rain hall and the Xiang family people finished collecting the corpses, they immediately threw themselves into the repair work, not even having time to rest. Chiu Yi Meng was like a real housekeeper, directing what little strength she had to fill in the holes in Yang Kai's mansion as much as possible. At some point, the Huo family young lord had disappeared, and no one knew where he had gone. Outside War City, Hu Xingchen swaggered out, walking straight for 10 kilometers before slowly coming to a stop and shouting, "Come out, what are you still hiding for?" The next moment, two old men at the Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th stage walked out of the darkness and came up to Hu Xing, respectfully calling out, "Young master." Hu Xing stared at the two old men with a complicated look on his face, only asking after a long time, "Did father ask you to protect me in secret?" One of the old men nodded, "Yes, old master was afraid that something would happen to you tonight, so he asked us to watch over you in secret." Hu Xing was the only son of the Hu family. Although Hu Xing hated his son for failing to live up to his expectations and had opposed his choice of Yang Kai as an ally during the day, how could he rest assured that his son would remain in such a dangerous place? Naturally, he had arranged everything so he could feel at ease. "Father asked you to protect me in secret." Hu Xing grit his teeth, "Don't you understand what that means? Why did you run out here? That Yang Zhao's blood warriors don't have the guts to kill me, at most they'll capture me, but this young master won't lose a single hair. And the two of you actually covered your faces, both of you hiding your faces, making a fool of yourself. This young master will die from anger because of you. Fortunately, you hid your actions well and only exchanged a single blow with the blood warriors, so those people probably couldn't see your origins. Otherwise, wouldn't my whole family have lost a great deal of face this time?" Of the masters sent by the central capital's 8 great families to participate in the inheritance war, except for the Yang family blood warriors, the strongest was no more than an Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th stage master. The Hu family's 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th stage masters had actually fought. If news of this spread out, they would definitely become a laughingstock. The two old men glanced at each other, both of them wearing awkward expressions, the one who spoke first saying, "We also have our own difficulties." Difficulties? What kind of difficulties? Let's hear it. Hu Xing squinted at the two old men. The two old fellows immediately looked embarrassed. Stuttering, they recounted what had happened during the day. As Hu Xing listened, his expression became uglier and uglier, waiting for them to finish before chuckling, "2 pots of wine were enough to buy you? I think you should just go to the Chiu family or the Yang family. My Hu family probably doesn't have that kind of fine wine for you to enjoy." "Young master, please don't be angry." The two old men panicked and quickly said, "The key is that the Chiu family's first young lady personally sent us 2 pots of wine. We really couldn't refuse." Hu Xing curled his lips and glared at them for a moment before gritting his teeth and cursing, "This pair of adulterers is really cunning to the extreme. It's all your fault, you two idiots didn't hide well and let others discover your whereabouts." Chapter 434. The 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th stage masters from the Hu family both wore awkward expressions, wanting to explain to their young master that it wasn't their fault for not hiding properly, but they simply couldn't bring themselves to do so. Even now, they still didn't understand how they were exposed. This matter was full of mysteries. This time, this young master is finished, he's really going to die without a burial, there's no way to reverse the situation. Hu Stars sighed and shook his head. What happened? The two masters were shocked. They had followed Hu Stars for so many years but had never heard him speak such serious words. At first, they thought Hu Stars had some kind of abnormality with his body, so how could they not worry? "Young master, if I were to run 10 laps around War City naked, wouldn't you say I'd die?" Hu Stars said with a sullen expression. The expressions of the two experts suddenly became extremely strange. They secretly thought that although their young master was good at eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling, he had never been raised to have such an indecent hobby since he was young. Glancing at each other, the two masters seemed to be imagining a scene of Hu Stars running around War City naked, causing all the women in War City to scream. For some reason, both of them couldn't help laughing. Quickly restraining their expressions, one of them asked, "Young master, what happened? How could you, do that? Did someone force you?" "No one forced me, it's just that this young master made a bet with that bastard Yang Kai on impulse during the day." Thinking back to the day's bet, Starshope gritted his teeth angrily. That bastard Yang Kai clearly had a plan in mind. Thinking that he wouldn't be able to resist tonight, he had actually been attracted by a golden feather eagle and excitedly agreed to his bet. At that time, he had thought that this fool was a bit whimsical, but now it seemed that the fool wasn't Yang Kai, but himself. After briefly explaining the bet during the day, the two masters from the Huo family suddenly became speechless. They both knew their young master's character. Huo Chen's reputation in the outside world was quite bad. He was known for being unrestrained and unrestrained, but when such a person made a promise, he would absolutely abide by it. In other words, this person's gambling character was quite good. He was indeed a rogue. However, he had never regretted gambling with others. From the beginning, he didn't have enough silver. Directly mortgaging the profound light gang to Yang Kai could be seen from this point. He was a very conceited person who didn't like owing people things, including bets and favors. Since he had made a bet, now he had lost. Now he would really be forced to run 10 laps around War City. The two powerhouses of the Huo family could almost predict that when this news reached the Huo family, Old Master Huo Jing would be so angry that he would bleed from all 7 orifices and die. Young Masters. Let's hear it, Huo Stars Hua. Without a care for his image, he sat down on a large rock and cast a sidelong glance at the two men. Young Master's young master. Young master, I don't think that young Lord Yang Kai really wants you to run 10 laps around War City naked. Young master, you are an ally of his, so he should give you some face. You might as well explain it to him directly. He will probably do you a favor and turn the big problem into a small one, and the small problem into nothing. Nonsense. Huo Stars snorted, although this young master hasn't spent much time with him, I'm quite clear about his temperament. This bastard is ruthless and ruthless, even more difficult to deal with than this young master. If I don't do something, he'll definitely force me to run 10 laps. Perhaps he's already looking for me right now. As he spoke, he ground his teeth. Damn, this bastard's personal strength is extraordinary. If not for that, this young master would have directly beaten him to vent his anger. Thinking back to the scene of that night and thinking back to how he had defeated Xiang Tianshao in a single move, Huo Stars couldn't help feeling a little resentful. Both of them were young lords from the 8 great families, so how could he be so strong? What does young master want to do? One of them heard Huo Stars' words and couldn't help asking. I don't know, that's why I'm asking you. Huo Stars acted like a hands-off boss. The man pondered for a moment before slowly saying, in any case, young master has already declared himself an ally of young Lord Yang Kai. Although the old master opposes it, it's useless. What's more, Yang Kai's house seems to be lacking both manpower and supplies. Our Huo family has a lot of financial resources, it's better to ask the old master for some manpower and supplies. This way, I'm afraid young Lord Yang Kai won't pursue the matter of your bet. Hearing this, Huo Xingchen grinned meaningfully and pointed to the master, you're the one who said that. This young master didn't say anything. When we get home, if my father asks, you'll report it truthfully. The master couldn't help being stunned and immediately smiled bitterly, understanding that Huo Stars had long since planned this and was just trying to induce him to speak up. In this way, if Huo Jing asked, he would have a reason to explain. Huo Jing was annoyed with his son's reckless actions and didn't give him any power to mobilize, but if these two masters acted as lobbyists, perhaps he could really mobilize manpower and supplies from the Huo family. Good, let's go home. We need to finish this matter before the sun comes out, lest that bastard say this young master goes back on his word and doesn't keep his word. Wuxia crossed his arms behind his back and swaggered back towards the central capital, the two immortal ascension boundary 8th stage masters following closely behind him. From an angle where no one could see, Wuxia's expression became dignified and serious, no longer showing any of his previous arrogance. In tonight's battle, everyone had only been amazed by the powerful defensive capabilities of the two blood warriors, but they had also been distracted by their own shameless actions. It seemed that no one had time to think about how the two blood warriors had managed to restore themselves to their peak in just a single day. Wuxia admitted that he had underestimated Yang Kai. Before nightfall, he really thought that Yang Kai would definitely lose tonight. Even if he guessed that he had some kind of trump card up his sleeve, he wouldn't be able to reverse the situation. However, he really hadn't expected that Yang Kai would be able to easily defend his mansion and even run around on his own. This young family little lord was really interesting. She thoroughly understood Yang Kai's character. He was someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Now that the relationship between them had eased a bit, how could Qiu Meng oppose him and make him hate her? Nodding, she went back to her work. Half an hour later, Yang Kai finished his work, his bones crackling with joy. The unyielding golden skeleton body secret art, he still hadn't been able to fully display. This seemingly ordinary set of martial arts actually contained the essence of the martial Tao. The more he used it, the greater the pressure he would have to bear. With Yang Kai's current cultivation, he could only display half of it at most. He estimated that he would need to reach the above immortal ascension boundary at least to be able to fully display the unyielding golden skeleton body secret art. Chapter 435. In a side hall of Yang Kai's mansion, Dong Qinghan was sipping tea, recalling some of the things the Wind and Cloud brothers had told him after they returned last night, the shock in his heart still not completely subsiding. Although he was not present at the time, through the description of the Wind and Cloud brothers, Dong Qinghan still realized how terrifying Yang Kai was. His cousin's growth these past few years was like a divine blessing. Dong Qinghan couldn't help feeling a little envious. After waiting for a while, Yang Kai came out sweating profusely. Dong Qinghan didn't blame him for putting on airs. After all, he had beaten him many times when he was a child. When Dong Qinghan saw Yang Kai, he was closer than a real brother, so naturally he didn't think too much about it. "You little brat." Dong Qinghan didn't get up, just stared at Yang Kai playfully. "You've got some skill. You didn't waste me lending the Wind and Cloud brothers to you for half a night." Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. "If I don't have a diamond, I won't take on porcelain work. Last night, I worked hard for the two seniors." Towards Feng Yun and Feng Yun, Kai Yang also respected them, not only because they were his cousin's guardians, but also because before High Heaven Pavilion's disaster, Feng Yun had traveled thousands of miles alone to deliver a message, giving the hundreds of people from High Heaven Pavilion some time to evacuate ahead of time. If the Wind Guard hadn't arrived in time, High Heaven Pavilion may have suffered some losses. If that had happened, his relationship with Qiu Meng would have been irreconcilable. The Wind Guard smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Old Yun and I just went to take a look around, we didn't contribute much. The one with real skill is young Lord Kai." The Cloud Guard also nodded silently. When the two old men looked at Yang Kai again, they couldn't help admiring him. There was no other young man who could amaze them like this. Their own young lord was considered good among the younger generation, but compared to this young master, he was still far from enough. Even Feng Yun didn't know to what extent a person like Yang Kai could grow. "This time, I brought 30 people with me to help you. In addition to the Wind and Cloud brothers, there are 5 immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, and the rest are all Yuan Qi cultivators, the lowest of which is Yuan Qi 5th stage. Dong Qinghan's expression changed. In addition, my father asked me to bring some supplies, most of which are finished pills and some raw materials. There are a few. There are quite a few of them. Yang Kai nodded silently and said with a smile, "Thank you, uncle." The Dong family was Dong Suju's maternal family, and Yang Kai was Dong Suju's son. As a first-class force, the Dong family was able to send so many immortal Ascension Boundary Masters. Moreover, he even had the materials to bring along with him, which was already very good. After all, before this, Yang Kai's chances of winning the inheritance war were almost nil. There was no hope at all. These people from the Dong clan must have been mentally prepared to sacrifice all of them. The loss of this group of people. In particular, the loss of a Heaven's Gate realm master was a heavy blow to the Dong family. Yang Kai knew what the Dong family had done for him. "I've already handed over everything to your steward." Dong Qinghan smiled, his slightly obese face filled with a wretched expression. "You mean Qiu Yimeng?" Yang Kai was stunned. Who else could it be? "Little brat, not only are you proud on the battlefield, but you're also proud of your love life. You're really something," Dong Qinghan said enviously. "Moreover, I heard from my little sister that there seems to be a pure and beautiful woman who misses you day and night." Dong Qinghan's words were filled with envy. Even though he was the young lord of a first-class family, it was difficult for him to compare to Yang Kai's luck. Yang Kai's brow twitched, and just as he was about to ask, Qiu Yimeng walked in from the outside and smiled. "What are you two brothers talking about? Why do I seem to hear you speak ill of me?" "I wouldn't dare." Dong Qinghan quickly got up from his chair. In front of Yang Kai, he could act as he pleased. After all, they were cousins, and in terms of closeness, he was closer than any of Yang Kai's cousins, but in front of Qiu Yimeng, Dong Qinghan didn't dare act rudely. Yang Kai chuckled, but before he could answer, his eyes narrowed slightly as he stared at the woman next to Qiu Yimeng, his brow furrowing slightly. This was a rare beauty. Her beautiful black hair flowed down like a waterfall, her arched eyebrows, a pair of starry eyes that could captivate souls, a delicate nose, pink cheeks that were slightly flushed, and 2 cherry lips that were dripping with water. Her oval face was as beautiful as a flower, and her skin was as white as snow. Her figure was absolutely beautiful, and she was charming and affectionate, pleasing to the eye. This beauty's figure, appearance, and temperament were all comparable to Qiu Yimeng's. However, if someone who didn't know her saw her for the first time, they would definitely not be attracted by her beautiful face, but rather by her pair of full breasts. This pair of jade peaks was a rare sight, almost bursting out of her clothes, trembling with elasticity. Next was her waist, which was as soft as a water snake, as if it had no bones, and her round buttocks seemed to ripple as she walked. Yang Kai's eyes couldn't help but stare at this pair of soft breasts for a while. Qiu Yimeng saw this and lightly snorted, straightening her back. Sniffing his nose, Yang Kai's eyes shifted upwards, just in time to meet the woman's pair of watery eyes. There seemed to be a mix of joy, regret, excitement, embarrassment, and a variety of other emotions. The corners of Yang Kai's mouth rose slightly, and the woman also pursed her lips into a smile. "Yang Kai, do you remember this girl?" Dong Qinghan asked with a smile. "Naturally I remember," Yang Kai nodded, turning to the woman and saying, "Seen your sister Lan, long time no see. And, since we last met, it's been 3 or 4 years," the woman converged the complex look in her eyes and calmly replied. This woman was none other than Lan Chu Dai from High Heaven Pavilion. Yang Kai had bought 2 young attribute spirit grass seeds from her, and later, when they entered the Heaven's Cave inheritance, he had teamed up with her. However, inside the Heaven's Cave inheritance, Yang Kai and this senior sister had some disagreements, so they parted ways. Later, when the first-class forces heard that the Heaven's Cave inheritance had appeared near High Heaven Pavilion, many of their disciples had obtained benefits from it, so they tried to poach her. At that time, Lan Chu Dai was poached by Dong Qing Han into the Dong family. She had also obtained a lot of benefits from the Heaven's Cave inheritance. At that time, Lan Chu Dai was only at the Qi transformation boundary 7th stage, but now she had reached the Yuan Qi boundary 6th stage. Yang Kai's impression of this senior sister was neither good nor bad, he only felt that she was a bit of a snobbish person who always fought for every opportunity. After such a long time, Yang Kai no longer cared about the little entanglements of the past. Lan Chu Dai was alone in High Heaven Pavilion, and she was also a woman, so it was understandable for her to be snobbish. Especially since she was beautiful and had the capital to back it up. If such a woman did not find ways to improve her strength and become a powerhouse, what awaited her would only be reduced to a man's plaything. Everyone had their own difficulties. Yang Kai could understand. Senior sister is amazing, your strength has risen so quickly. Thinking quickly, Yang Kai couldn't help but praise. How can I compare to junior brother? Lan Chu Dai smiled. Senior sister never thought that I would have a junior brother from the central capital's Yang family. If I had known earlier, senior sister would not have accepted the money for those 2 seeds. Her words were polite and even somewhat restrained. It seemed that after this meeting, along with the change in status of Yang Kai, Lan Chu Dai was slightly uncomfortable. Chiu Yi Meng observed from the sidelines and couldn't help feeling that the relationship between this pair of senior sister and junior brother was a bit too dull, without the slightest hint of joy. Although she didn't know the reason for this, she was still able to infer some information. Dong Qing Han smiled and interjected, Yang Kai, Sister Lan is now the leader of our Dong family's younger generation. Many people in the Dong family worship her. Really? Yang Kai was a little surprised. Her strength has risen rapidly, and she's also very beautiful. I don't know how many people like her. Dong Qing Han said, intentionally or unintentionally. Lan Chu Dai's cheeks couldn't help but blush as she glared at Dong Qing Han. Young Master Dong, don't speak nonsense. As she spoke, she secretly observed Yang Kai's reaction and found that he was indifferent, so she couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. Good, good. Chiu Yi Meng clapped her hands, interrupting their meaningless conversation. Let's postpone reminiscing for the time being. Now that everyone is here, Yang Kai, tell us about your plans for the next few days. What plans? Yang Kai looked at Chiu Yi Meng in amazement. The Chiu family's first young lady blinked twice. You are the master of this mansion, and you won a great victory last night. Don't you have any plans for the next few days? What plans do you have in mind? Yang Kai smiled. You can attack your 8th brother Yang Quan. As far as I know, although Yang Quan has an immortal ascension boundary 8th stage blood warrior as his retainer, there is only one. With our current strength, we can easily deal with him. As long as you attack him, you can let Chu Gao Yi or Ing Jiu entangle that blood warrior. At that time, it will be easy to capture him and seize his flag. Do you think my brothers are vegetarians? Yang Kai couldn't help laughing. Would they just watch me attack my 8th brother and remain indifferent? Of course they aren't vegetarians. Sitting on top of a mountain to watch the tigers fight and then reap the benefits of the fisherman's quarrel, especially since you are the first one to do so. However, last night, except for your eldest brother Yang Wei, who didn't lose any of his strength, everyone else has lost some of their strength. In the next few days, they will only be recruiting and expanding their own forces. How could they spare any energy to deal with you? Even if they did, they would only be harassing you. If it were up to me, we should go out tonight and eliminate your eighth brother. Your ambition isn't small. Yang Kai looked at her with a smile. I admit what you said makes sense, but I won't attack my eighth brother. Why? Chiu Yi-meng asked suspiciously. If we miss these few days, we may not have such a good opportunity in the future. Dong Qinghan also nodded seriously. Young Lady Chiu is right, I also think we should go out tonight. He hadn't been able to participate in last night's battle, so naturally he couldn't wait to stir up some trouble. Haven't you figured out the rules of the inheritance war yet? If you can defeat my eighth brother, then you will have a chance to grasp his strength. With such a good opportunity, why hesitate? Chiu Yi-meng couldn't understand. If she were in Yang Kai's shoes, there was no need to think too much. Tonight, she would strike while the iron was hot and turn the world upside down, making her name even more resounding. So when she heard Yang Kai refuse her proposal, she was a little confused. Rs. Chapter 436. In the side hall, not only was Chiu Yi-meng puzzled, everyone else also didn't understand why Yang Kai didn't take advantage of the situation to attack. Now, he should have the qualifications to attack Yang Quan. Could it be that at this time you still care about your brotherly feelings? Chiu Yi-meng sneered. Don't forget, last night you were attacked by two brothers. When did they care about you? Your young family's inheritance war, to put it bluntly, is a survival of the fittest, using the blood and bones of the other family's cultivator to pave your road to fame. Yang Kai frowned. Although he admitted that what Chiu Yi-meng said was true, he still didn't say anything. Chiu Yi-meng didn't seem to notice his expression and continued, what's more, even if you don't attack Yang Quan, someone else will sooner or later. Instead of letting others take advantage of this piece of fat, it's better to grasp it in your own hands now. Junior brother, there should be a reason for doing this, right? Lon Chudai suddenly spoke, her beautiful eyes flashing a soft light of understanding. Chiu Yi-meng couldn't help feeling a bit uncomfortable as she snorted, what reason? Think about it yourself, your young lady Chiu is so smart, naturally you can figure it out. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. Chiu Yi-meng stared at him, her slightly fluctuating mood suddenly calming down. The reason why her tone had been so harsh was because no matter what she suggested, Yang Kai had never accepted it. She couldn't help but feel discouraged. Secondly, it was because Yang Kai had just glanced at Lon Chudi's chest, which made her feel very uncomfortable. This young lady also has one, it's just not that big. Chiu Yi-meng was a smart person. She was intelligent and naturally had her own way of thinking about things. After calming down, her thoughts quickly turned, trying to figure out why Yang Kai hadn't attacked. Dong Qinghan saw the slightly tense atmosphere and didn't dare to interrupt, only remaining silent and pretending to be deaf and mute. Inside the side hall, the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. After a while, Chiu Yi-meng's eyes lit up and she raised her head. Looking towards Yang Kai with a look of understanding, she smiled and said, I understand. Since you know, don't suggest it again. Yang Kai nodded. And I won't order you around in the future. It's like showing off in front of an expert. Chiu Yi-meng spat disdainfully. Good girl, it's better for women to be obedient. Yang Kai gave her a, you're quite sensible look. Dong Qinghan had just taken a sip of water, but when he heard these words, he almost spat it out, coughing uncontrollably as his admiration for Yang Kai deepened. Who would dare to say such words to Chiu Yi-meng? None of the young lords of the central capital's 8 great families had the courage, nor the qualifications to do so. Only his own cousin dared. How bold! But the Chiu family's eldest young miss actually didn't refute. Lon Chudai listened to the conversation in a daze, but she was too embarrassed to ask. he still couldn't figure out the deeper meaning behind it. On the other hand, Elders Feng and Yun nodded in agreement after a moment of contemplation. Can I ask? Dong Qing Han's curiosity was piqued. What kind of riddles are you playing at? Chiu Yi Meng chuckled lightly and turned to the wind and clouds. If two seniors have guessed correctly, please share it with young Master Dong. Don't make your young master anxious. The elders Feng and Yun glanced at each other before the wind guard lightly coughed and said, "These two old men can only see one reason. If there is anything wrong with what we said, we hope young Master Kai and young Lady Chiu can point it out." After pausing for a moment, he continued, "Young Master Kai is now in the limelight. Of the remaining 7 young lords, no one can match him." Young Kai and Chiu Yi Meng glanced at each other and smiled, both of them knowing that Lu Liang had sent someone. "Since they've come, let them come in," Young Kai ordered, not giving face to the monk but the Buddha. The Lu family had definitely come to deliver gifts. Xiang Tianshao nodded and went out to greet them. After a while, Lu Song led 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th Stage Masters into the hall. Lu Song really didn't want to give the materials he had brought to Yang Kai. In his mind, Yang Kai was definitely a treacherous and cunning person, otherwise, why would he try to extort his Lu family's wealth? He had never seen such a shameless person before. If possible, Lu Song would have taken this batch of materials to one of the other Yang family young lords, but after Yang Kai's bizarre performance last night spread out, Lu Song suddenly realized that it was impossible not to deliver these things. Lu Liang had ordered that no matter how Yang Kai's performance in the inheritance war was, these things had to be given to him. What's more, Yang Kai's performance was not ordinary. If this batch of materials was privately handed over to someone else, he would definitely be punished when he returned home. This time, not only did he have to deliver gifts, but he also had to bring people to act as a hired thug for Yang Kai. Lu Song couldn't help feeling disgusted. The Lu family had dispatched a lot of people this time, 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th Stage Masters to act as Lu Song's protectors, 1 Immortal Ascension Boundary 4th Stage, 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 3rd Stage, and 20 Yuan Qi cultivators. With such a force, no matter which young lord they chose to rely on, they would definitely be welcomed into his mansion, but this Yang Kai was too arrogant, actually allowing his subordinates to lead him in without even bothering to greet him. Lu Song was annoyed. When he walked in, his expression was calm, but after seeing Chiu Yi Meng, he quickly stepped forward and said, "Lu Song greets cousin." Chiu Yi Meng gently nodded, "And, you've worked hard." Lu Song smiled, "It's not hard, I just came to deliver some things, it's nothing." Saying so, he swept his eyes over the crowd and asked, "Which one of you is young Lord Kai?" Young Kai nodded, "I am." Lu Song's eyes swept over, the corners of his mouth rising slightly as he chuckled, "Greetings young Lord Kai, this Lu Song has long been looking forward to meeting you." When Chiu Yi Meng heard these words, her brow couldn't help wrinkling slightly. Lu Song's tone was slightly provocative. Yang Kai's expression remained indifferent, not caring much about it, simply saying, "Patriarch Lu must have spent a lot of money." Yang Kai had just blackmailed Lu Liang, so it would be strange if this young Lord Lu's mood was good, so Yang Kai didn't bother arguing with him. After all, what he had done was a bit unkind, but there was a reason for it. Lu Song hadn't expected Yang Kai's reaction to be so calm, so he didn't dare show any disdain, simply saying, "Before I came here, my father ordered me to deliver these things to young Lord Kai. The people I brought are at young Lord Kai's disposal, I hope they can help young Lord Kai in the inheritance war." I understand." Yang Kai nodded, "Since that's the case, you can do as you please. The mansion is quite large, have Chiu Yi Meng arrange a courtyard for you to rest in. If there's anything you need, I'll call for you." Regarding the change in attitude of the Lu family's patriarch, Lu Liang, Yang Kai didn't show any surprise, but he didn't care much about this group of people from the Lu family. If he hadn't guessed wrong, Lu Song's group should have arrived in War City a long time ago. They hadn't shown up yesterday and only arrived today, apparently waiting to see if he would be eliminated last night. Whether this guess was correct or not, Yang Kai would have to ask the Bamboo Knot gang about it. For such late allies, Yang Kai naturally wouldn't treat them the same as the Dong family and Chiu Yimeng. Chiu Yimeng smiled and was about to arrange for Lu Song's group when Xiang Tianshao suddenly ran in and said, "Young Lord Kai, someone else, who?" "Purple Fern Valley." Chiu Yimeng's eyes lit up as she said in surprise, "It's Xiao Man." As she spoke, she hurried over to Kai Yang and whispered, "It's not that Xiao Man didn't want to help you yesterday, but you also know that Xiao Man is just a girl. Although she has some status in Purple Fern Valley, she doesn't have the right to make decisions. For her to be able to bring people here today, she must have spent a lot of effort. You should thank her properly." However, Luo Xiaoman and Chiu Yimeng had always been inseparable, so Yang Kai guessed that the people from Purple Fern Valley would probably follow Luo Xiaoman's orders, which was equivalent to following Chiu Yimeng's instructions. This meant that they could truly become his helpers. Yang Kai's thoughts quickly turned, and he quickly set the people from Purple Fern Valley in his mind. Arriving at the main hall, Yang Kai introduced the young lords and young ladies of the various forces one by one. After exchanging some pleasantries, everyone took their seats. Lu Song's expression wasn't very good, but when he saw Yang Kai go out to greet Luo Xiaoman, a look of understanding suddenly appeared in his eyes and the anger in his heart subsided. Since ancient times, heroes loved beautiful women. Now that such a beautiful young woman had come to seek refuge, Yang Kai taking the initiative to greet her was understandable. A pair of shifty eyes swept over Luo Xiaoman and Lan Chu Dai, secretly comparing which of them had more capital. Luo Xiaoman was originally a mischievous girl, but after going to the ash-gray cloud evil land, her temperament had changed greatly, her courage becoming smaller than a mouse's. Being stared at by Lu Song like this, she suddenly felt a little uneasy and couldn't help hiding behind Chiu Yimeng. On the other hand, Lan Chu Dai gracefully stood next to Dong Qing Han, her pair of beautiful eyes staring back at Lu Song without the slightest trace of fear, a cold smile appearing on her face. Lu Song immediately restrained himself. Although Yang Kai was talking to Fan Hong and Dong Qing Han, he was also observing the expressions of everyone in the hall. Noticing Lu Song's awkwardness, he couldn't help sneering in his heart. Senior Sister Lan was not a person to be trifled with. She was a strong person, so how could she allow others to take advantage of her without reacting? Before they could exchange a few words though, Xiang Tianshao, the errand boy, actually walked in again. Before he could speak, Yang Kai asked, "Who is it this time?" "It's a young man and woman, their strength is probably around Yuan Chi's 7th stage. Xiang Tianshao replied meticulously, "They say they are old acquaintances of young Lord Kai, one is called Qin Shueshu and the other is called Su Xiaoyu." "Them?" Yang Kai looked surprised. "You know them?" Chiu Yimeng asked in surprise. I know them." Yang Kai's mouth curled into a smile. "I met them one time when I was out for life experience. They were a pair of brother and sister, from Reflecting Moon sect." Reflecting Moon sect. Chiu Yimeng frowned. "If I remember correctly, this Reflecting Moon sect should be just a second-class sect." "It's a second-class sect." Yang Kai nodded. Xiang Tianshao then asked, "Young Lord Kai, there are only 2 people and don't seem to have a master accompanying them. What do you think we should do?" Only 2 young cultivators around Yuan Qi's 7th stage wouldn't be able to play a role in the inheritance war. If one wanted to participate in the inheritance war, all the great forces in the world would either send a large number of people to assist or provide supplies. It was impossible for them to only send 2 weak young cultivators to help. Xiang Tianzhao's question was obviously because he thought Qin Shuishu and Su Xiaoyu wanted to use old acquaintances as an excuse to climb up the great tree known as Yangkai. Xiang Tianzhao quite despised such people who tried to climb up the social ladder. Yangkai, even if they're old acquaintances, if they have bad intentions, you should know how to refuse. As his cousin, Dong Qinghan felt that he had an obligation to remind him. If he really did so, it would only disappoint other allies who had brought people and supplies. After all, after the inheritance war was won, this reflecting moon sect would also want a share of the spoils. However, if they were sincere in coming to help, even if they were few in number and had low strength, it wouldn't matter, at least it was their good intentions. They won't. Yang Kai shook his head, got up and straightened his clothes. Wait a moment, I'll go out and greet them myself. Qiu Yimeng stared blankly, not understanding why Yang Kai would treat a second-class sect so seriously. Even when he had just greeted the people from Purple Fern Valley, he hadn't been so happy. After pondering for a moment, Qiu Yimeng chuckled. Turning her head to look at Lu Song, she found that the Lu family young master's expression had become quite ugly. Frowning, Qiu Yimeng knew that he was resentful because of Yang Kai's preferential treatment and couldn't help secretly sighing. Lu Liang sending his son to participate in the inheritance war this time was likely to ruin their plans. Qiu Yimeng hadn't had much contact with this Lu family young master, so she didn't know what his character was like before, but now it seemed that this cousin of hers wasn't enough to accomplish anything great. Suddenly smiling, Qiu Yimeng said, Lu Song, don't think too much about it. Since those 2 people are Yang Kai's acquaintances, there's nothing wrong with him going out to greet them. Later, when they come in, we'll just send them away. I'm afraid they don't have the qualifications to stay here. Dong Qinghan couldn't help glancing over at Qiu Yimeng with some surprise, seemingly not having expected this young lady Qiu to be so narrow-minded. Lu Song was secretly annoyed, but when he heard Qiu Yimeng say this, he suddenly smiled, thinking that Qiu Yimeng was supporting him, quickly nodding, what cousin says is right, which one of us here isn't from a first-class force? That reflecting moon sect is quite interesting. A trivial second-class sect actually wants to send only 2 people to participate in the inheritance war, ridiculous. I'd like to see what kind of face they'll have to remain here. Qiu Yimeng smiled and nodded, no longer saying anything. Seeing the encouragement in her eyes, Lu Song couldn't help rubbing his hands together, waiting for Qin Shuishu and Su Xiaoyu to come in so he could teach them a lesson. Outside the mansion, a young man and a young woman were waiting anxiously. Su Xiaoyu stared inside for a long time but didn't see any sign of Yang Kai, so she couldn't help pursing her lips and asking, Brother, do you think that Yang Kai is this Yang Kai? Why didn't anyone stop us even after we reported our names? Qin Shuishu heard this and smiled wryly. You're asking the wrong person. How could I know if this Brother Yang is the same Brother Yang? This world is big, there are many people with the same name and surname. Ah. Su Xiaoyu couldn't help feeling a little lost. If the Yang Kai here isn't the one we know, then if we ran over here and were rejected by him, how shameful would that be? If it's shameful, then it's shameful. Master didn't want to participate in this inheritance war. Our reflecting moon sect is just a second-class force, our capital isn't strong, so even if we participate, we won't get any benefits. It was only because we heard that there was a Yang Kai here that Master allowed us to participate. If the person here isn't the one we know, it's actually a good thing to refuse. We can just go back home and save ourselves some trouble. I think he is. Su Xiaoyu suddenly affirmed, do you remember his performance in that isolated world? Those people from the Tianlang dynasty were all toyed with by him, all of our lives were saved by him. Besides the central capital's Yang family, I'm afraid there is no other force capable of cultivating such a person. Recalling all his experiences in that isolated world, Chen Shuaishu couldn't help smiling bitterly. At that time, if it weren't for this Yang Kai, that group of cultivator from the Great Han Dynasty would likely have been completely wiped out. Whether it's him or not, we'll see soon enough. Chapter 438. As the brother and sister pair were talking, they saw Yang Kai walk out from inside. Brother Chen, little sister Shu, I trust you've been well since we last met. Yang Kai smiled, seemingly having not been so happy for a long time. Chen Shua and Su Xiaoyu were just wondering if the Yang Kai they knew was the one from the central capital's Yang family, but after seeing him in person, they couldn't help falling into a daze, even forgetting to answer, just standing there stupidly staring forward. At this moment, the two of them didn't know why, but their hearts suddenly skipped a beat, as if they had never imagined that they would be lucky enough to make friends with such a character, causing their faces to glow. Is there a flower on my face? Seeing their hesitation, Yang Kai jokingly asked. Hearing the affability in his tone, the brother and sister pair recovered and returned to their normal state. Chen Shua calmly greeted, Junior brother Yang, it's been a long time. Su Xiaoyu pursed her lips and looked Yang Kai up and down, muttering angrily, you really are from the central capital's Yang family, we actually didn't know anything about it, so hateful. Junior sister. Chen Shua tugged at Su Xiaoyu's clothes and glared at her. The Yang family has rules, when its disciples go out for life experience, they must not reveal their identity, junior brother Yang didn't deliberately deceive you. I know. Su Xiaoyu smiled, I was just a little surprised. It's not too late to know now, come on in. Yang Kai warmly greeted the two of them and led them in. Along the way, Su Xiaoyu chattered like a sparrow, constantly asking questions. She was only from a second-class sect, and although she was the future pillar of Reflecting Moon sect, her status wasn't high. Even the young lords and young ladies of first-class forces rarely saw her, so now that she had suddenly met someone from a super force, her curiosity was naturally overflowing. Especially since this person was someone she had known for a long time. On top of that, they had all gone through thick and thin together. Su Xiaoyu's questions were messy and chaotic, like a village girl from the countryside entering a big city, all kinds of questions bombarding the two of them. Yang Kai led the two of them inside while answering casually. Chen Shua smiled bitterly and shook his head. Is your Yang family big? I heard that it occupies 1/10 of the entire central capital's surface area. Just by riding a horse, it would take 3 days and 3 nights to complete a single lap, is that true? The more Su Xiaoyu asked, the more excited she became. Yang Kai didn't answer. Suddenly, a disdainful laugh was heard. The voice entered his ears. Su Xiaoyu couldn't help feeling startled, quickly glancing around and discovering that Yang Kai had led them to a side hall where many people were already sitting. Those young masters and young mistresses were dressed luxuriously. It was obvious that they came from extraordinary backgrounds. Most of them were accompanied by powerful guardians, and the accessories they wore were also glowing. Obviously, they were all high-grade secret treasures. Shi and Chen Shue, on the other hand. Although they also had secret treasures and were dressed properly, they were nothing compared to those people. However, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. The one who laughed was a young master sitting on a chair. At this moment, he was looking at them as if they were country bumpkins. Su Xiaoyu's face flushed red in an instant, wishing she could find a hole to crawl into and never come out again. Yang Kai frowned slightly and smiled, don't listen to the nonsense of outsiders. Although the Yang family occupies a large area, it's not so exaggerated. Oh. Su Xiaoyu's eyelashes fluttered. Even with Yang Kai's help, she was still embarrassed. Chen Shui gently squeezed her palm and conveyed his comfort, making Su Xiaoyu feel much better. She really didn't expect that there would be so many people waiting here. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have asked so many idiotic questions. She really hadn't seen much of the world, but when she went out, she knew what to say and what to do. It was just that Yang Kai had been very easygoing before, not showing the slightest contempt for her and Chen Shui because of their extraordinary background. Su Xiaoyu was so happy that she had asked a few more questions, but she didn't expect it would reach the ears of others. Come, let me introduce them to you. Yang Kai lightly brushed aside the awkwardness and said enthusiastically, "These two are friends I met in an isolated world," reflecting Moon Sex Chen Shui and Su Xiaoyu. In that isolated world, Yang Kai had received a lot of guidance from Chen Shui. After that, this brother and sister pair had wanted to travel together with Yang Kai and take care of each other. At that time, they were both Yuan Qi boundary 3rd stage cultivators while Yang Kai was only at the separation and reunion boundary 3rd stage. Chen Shui and Su Xiaoyu obviously wanted to take care of him. Because of this, Yang Kai also had a good impression of these two. Chen Shui smiled and shook his head. Junior brother Yang is too serious. It was junior brother Yang who saved my brother and sister's lives. If it weren't for junior brother Yang, I'm afraid my two brothers and sister would have already become skeletons. This life-saving grace will always be engraved in our hearts. Since you are Yang Kai's friends, you are also Dong Qing Han's friends. Fatty Dong smiled and stood up, cupping his fists in a pleasant manner. Fatty Dong was very clear that the friends Kai Yang had made over the past few years had all been made with heart and soul. They weren't friends that were mixed with the slightest interest. Such people were what Yang Kai liked the most. Generally, all young lords from powerful families had a common problem. When others came to make friends with them, their first thought was to suspect that they were trying to form a relationship with them. Therefore, Dong Qing Han was also quite serious about this matter. So it is young Master Dong. Chen Shui had obviously heard of Dong Qing Han's name and quickly returned the greeting. Purple Fern Valley, Fan Hong. Greetings, Brother Fan. Chiu family, Chiu Yi Meng. The Chiu family's first young lady smiled lightly, her pretty face glowing with an amazing luster. Chen Shui's expression shook while Su Xiaoyu also turned a surprised look towards Chiu Yi Meng. So it is the Chiu family's first young lady. It is an honor to meet you. This wasn't some kind of polite greeting. Chen Shui's words were filled with sincerity, a look of admiration even appearing on his face. Chiu Yi Meng chuckled happily, glancing towards Yang Kai provocatively, as if saying, "Even if you don't take me seriously, this young lady is still famous throughout the world." Everyone present took the initiative to greet Chen Shui out of respect for Yang Kai. Only Lu Song sat in his chair with a trace of contempt on his face. Chen Shui turned to him and smiled, cupping his fists. "May I ask who this is?" He naturally saw that this person was looking down on him and his junior sister. It was him who had just ridiculed them. It was normal for a second-class sex disciple to be looked down upon by a first-class family's disciple. Chen Shui had seen this many times, so naturally he didn't hold any resentment. Moreover, the people here should all be Yang Kai's allies, so how could he embarrass Yang Kai? Yang Kai also wanted to resolve the conflict between him and Lu Song. After all, if everything went well, everyone would be working together in the future. If there was a conflict between allies, as the head of the family, Yang Kai would also be in a difficult position. Unexpectedly, when Chen Shui lowered his posture and asked, Lu Song didn't say a word, as if he was deaf, simply holding his tea and calmly blowing at it. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed, and a cold smile gradually appeared on his face. Immediately, he turned to look at Chiu Meng. No matter what, Lu Song was still Chiu Meng's cousin. Yang Kai wanted to see who gave Lu Song the courage to act so arrogantly here and who supported him. Turning his gaze, Yang Kai happened to meet the beautiful eyes of the Chiu family's first young lady. Chiu Meng actually smiled at Yang Kai and slowly shook her head. Yang Kai couldn't help but frown, his eyes slowly narrowing, the cold light in his eyes becoming even colder. Chen Shua waited for a moment but still didn't see Lu Song answer, so he couldn't help feeling a little embarrassed. Patiently, he continued to ask, "This brother, has this Chen offended you in any way? If so, this Chen will apologize to you here. I ask this brother master to be magnanimous." After these words came out, Su Xiaoyu's eyes instantly became moist, and she even had the urge to cry. Chen Shua was her senior brother and also her lover. It was not a big deal for her to be ridiculed by Lu Song. She was just embarrassed, that was all. But seeing her hero apologize to someone so humbly, how could she not feel distressed? Especially since the other party was looking down on them for no reason at all. With tears in her eyes, Su Xiaoyu turned her head and looked towards Yang Kai, hoping that he could mediate so that her brother would no longer be embarrassed. Yang Kai grinned at her and moved his mouth. Su Xiaoyu didn't see what he was saying, but she understood the meaning of his eyes. "Don't worry." Su Xiaomei's mood suddenly calmed down. Knowing that Yang Kai wouldn't just sit back and watch, she couldn't help sniffling and holding back the tears in her eyes, not saying a word. After Chen Shua asked twice, Lu Song finally put down the teacup in his hand and shook his head proudly. "No need to be so serious, you haven't offended me in any way, it's just that I'm a bit of a loner, not good at communicating, especially with those who haven't seen the world." Chen Shua's expression froze for a moment before he smiled awkwardly. "Is that so? Then this Chen will be rude." Lu Song raised his eyes and looked at Chen Shua, chuckling. "Are you from Reflecting Moon Sect?" "Yes, junior sister and I are from Reflecting Moon Sect." "How many people have come to participate in the inheritance war this time?" Chen Shua's expression became somewhat awkward. "For the time being, it's just me and junior sister." But, before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Lu Song's sneer. The Lu family first young master stood up and walked forward with his hands crossed behind his back, putting on a haughty look as he said, "Only 2 people. Yuan Qi's 7th stage, yet you want to participate in the inheritance war. Do you think this is child's play?" Hearing this sarcastic remark, Chen Shua was left speechless, his face flushed red. Chapter 439. Inside the main hall, Lu Song arrogantly sneered. Dong Qing Han and Fan Hong both snickered. They weren't idiots like Lu Song, so they naturally understood what was going on, but since Yang Kai and Chiu Meng didn't say anything, the two of them didn't intervene, instead choosing to sit back and watch the good show. Lu Song, seeing Chiu Meng's look of approval, became even more arrogant and sneered. "If you want to get something in return, you must first invest. Can your Reflecting Moon sect take out so much strength and materials?" "Sorry, I forgot you're just a second-class sect, so you probably don't have such strength, but at the very least, my Lu family should take out at least half of its strength. If you can't, I advise you to go back to where you came from." "Young master." The Lu family's immortal ascension boundary 7th stage master's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. He wasn't young and had been observing the situation, so of course he could see the coldness and displeasure in Yang Kai's eyes. His own young master was in someone else's mansion, speaking arrogantly, bullying and suppressing Yang Kai's friends. Wasn't this not giving Yang Kai face? What's more, when Yang Kai had just introduced Chen Shuishu and Su Xiaoyu, his tone was quite serious. These two didn't have high backgrounds, but they were clearly highly valued by Yang Kai. If Lu Song was allowed to continue, he was afraid he would ruin things. Young master, you've already said so much, sit down and have some tea. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, this master couldn't say anything, so he could only quietly signal Lu Song. However, Lu Song simply turned a deaf ear and continued to sneer, becoming more and more arrogant. Chen Shuishu's face became uglier and uglier. Lu Song. Yang Kai suddenly glared at the Lu family first young master coldly and shouted. What orders does young Lord Kai have? Lu Song immediately stopped his endless taunts. He quickly asked. Towards Chen Shuishu, he could speak bluntly, but towards Yang Kai, he didn't have the courage. You can go. Lu Song was stunned, his face full of confusion. I'll give you 30 breaths of time. If you don't leave my mansion in 30 breaths of time, I'll make you stay here forever. Yang Kai's expression was extremely cold, and his eyes flashed with a cold light. Lu Song was completely stunned. He had never expected such an ending. Yang Kai was clearly trying to chase him away, but what made him confused was the person he was chasing away was not the two from the Reflecting Moon sect, but him. Young Lord Kai must be joking, right? Lu Song's mouth twitched slightly as his face gradually reddened. If he was really kicked out by Yang Kai in front of so many people, he would definitely be kicked out. He had lost all his face. I'm not joking. You have 25 breaths left. Yang Kai snorted. How is that possible? Lu Song screamed as he stared at Yang Kai incredulously. Our Lu family has contributed so many people to help you participate in the inheritance war, yet you actually want to drive us away. Don't you want this help? Yang Kai didn't answer and just stared at him coldly. Perceiving this coldness, Lu Song couldn't help feeling a little scared, but suddenly, as if thinking of something, he shouted, My cousin is also here to help you. She's a great help to you. If you drive me away, aren't you afraid she'll also leave? If she doesn't know what's good for her, I'll also drive her away. Yang Kai sneered, You have 20 breaths left. Chiu Yi Meng couldn't help rolling her eyes. Cousin. Lu Song finally panicked, secretly regretting all the nonsense he had just said. He stared at Chiu Yi Meng, expecting her to say a few good words so Yang Kai wouldn't be so arrogant. Chiu Yi Meng sighed, Lu Song, you should leave. This man says 1 is 1, 2 is 1. You've angered him. I can't help you. But, 15 breaths. Yang Kai issued a final warning. Young master, let's go. The Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th Stage Master smiled bitterly as he tried to persuade Lu Song. Lu Song didn't see the hidden meaning behind this farce, but the Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th Stage Master did. Knowing that it was useless to say anything more, he quickly pulled Lu Song along with his other companion and rushed out. Seeing Lu Song's embarrassment and helplessness, Su Xiaoyu suddenly flushed with excitement and secretly clenched her fists. All the insults and ridicule she had received before seemed to have been returned at this moment. She couldn't help glancing towards Yang Kai gratefully. Outside, Lu Song's shouts could be heard, I'm not leaving. I brought people and supplies to participate in the inheritance war, yet someone actually wants to drive me out. Today he wants to drive me away, tomorrow I'll expose this matter and see who dares to seek refuge with him in the future. Inside the hall, Chiu Yi Meng shook her head, secretly smiling bitterly. If this Lu family young master's performance hadn't been so bad, how could the Chiu family's first young lady have been so insidious as to push him out? The Lu family was supported by the Chiu family, and they were also related. If there was even the slightest possibility, Chiu Meng would have been more than happy to let Lu Song stay here. Hearing him actually threaten her, Chiu Meng couldn't help rejoicing that her decision had been correct. Driving him away now would only cause him to lose face, but if she had allowed him to stay, perhaps one day Yang Kai would kill him. Did you encourage him to do so? Yang Kai stared at Chiu Meng meaningfully. Although Lu Song was a bit of an idiot, without Chiu Meng's support, he wouldn't have dared act so presumptuous in front of him. Just now, he had acted so arrogantly and unscrupulously because when Yang Kai went to meet Qin Shuishu and Su Xiaoyu, Chiu Meng had given him some hints. And I just casually said a few words. Chiu Meng nodded lightly. What's wrong with that? I don't think you wanted to keep him here anyway. And I didn't want to keep him here, but he did bring a batch of things with him, so it wouldn't be good to drive him away. Yang Kai smiled slightly. That's why you should thank me. Chiu Meng's beautiful eyes flashed as she unabashedly claimed the credit. With Yang Kai, she had no intention of being polite. This man was too strong. If she were to show weakness, she would only be led by the nose by him for the rest of her life. Yang Kai pretended not to hear her and just turned to Qin Shuishu. Brother Qin, I've let you suffer. Qin Shuishu scratched his head. From the exchange between Yang Kai and Chiu Meng just now, he had understood some of the meaning. It seemed that this time, it was a trap for that person. And he had just caught up with it. However, Qin Shuishu didn't mind and just smiled. To be able to contribute to junior brother Yang, what's the matter? So what if I'm criticized? I won't lose a piece of flesh. Frowning, Qin Shuishu said, it's just that if you drive him out like this, it may not be good for your reputation. Yang Kai's expression was indifferent. Keeping him here is troublesome. This person is too unreasonable. Even if he doesn't have a conflict with you now, he will have conflicts with others in the future. A single piece of rat shit can ruin a pot of porridge. I won't allow such a thing to happen. It's better to cut the Gordian knot. Don't you see that Chiu Meng, your cousin, doesn't want to take care of him? Chiu Meng curled her lips. Don't push me. You make it sound like I'm a vicious woman. If you drive him away, I'll have to explain it to Lu Liang. Ha. I hope Lu Liang understands my difficulties. Of all the people he could have sent, why did he send this person? Perceiving Chiu Meng's embarrassment, everyone fell silent. At that moment, some fluctuations of power suddenly came from outside, mixed with a few muffled groans. Everyone's expression changed, not knowing why a battle had suddenly broken out. Yang Kai quickly released his divine sense and his expression soon calmed down. Turning to Chiu Meng, he said, I'm very glad you found a way to drive Lu Song away. What happened outside? Chiu Meng asked in surprise. Everyone else also looked puzzled. He provoked someone he shouldn't have. Yang Kai sneered, being so blind, he only has himself to blame. As he spoke, the battle outside subsided and Lu Song's miserable howls reached everyone's ears. Listening to them made everyone's blood run cold. What the hell is going on? Chiu Meng was anxious and couldn't help but want to go outside and see what was going on. That bastard actually dared to have ideas about father. A cursing voice came from outside and a moment later, Wuxia walked in with an annoyed look on his face. As he cursed, he shouted, Who do you think father is? Don't you know what kind of person he is? After coming in, he shouted, Hey, Yang Kai, what happened to that little brat just now? Why did he try to steal my things as soon as he saw me? What did he steal from you? Yang Kai was stunned. His divine sense had only probed the general situation and wasn't clear on the specifics. Father's treasures. Wuxia waved his hand, bring them in. Immediately, a group of people came in carrying a few boxes and placed them on the ground. With both hands on his waist, Wuxia said, "That's all, that little brat wanted to steal from me, I don't know what's wrong with him." Qiu Yimeng was extremely helpless and hurriedly asked, "What did you do to him?" "I broke a few of his ribs and threw him out," Wuxia replied indifferently. Hearing this, Qiu Yimeng couldn't help feeling relieved and glanced at Yang Kai, both of them not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Lu Song was probably unhappy that he had been driven out and had lost all his supplies, so when he saw Wuxia bring some things over, he wanted to steal them to make up for his losses. He had 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th Stage Masters while Wuxia only had 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th Stage Masters. In terms of strength, he clearly had the upper hand. Unexpectedly, these 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th Stage Masters weren't ordinary Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters. By the time he realized what was going on, it was already too late. Fortunately, Wuxia didn't want to kill anyone in Yang Kai's house, otherwise, Lu Song's life would have been forfeit. After listening to Qiu Yimeng's brief explanation, Wuxia suddenly realized, "So that was your cousin. Fortunately, I didn't go too hard on him, otherwise he would have died." "Qiu Yimeng, how did you have such a bad cousin? Let's not talk about me first." "You suddenly disappeared last night, where did you go?" Qiu Yimeng asked. Wuxia's expression couldn't help becoming a bit awkward as he hesitantly said, "I went home to find my father and ask for some things and people." "Your father actually arranged for some of the family's masters for you?" Qiu Yimeng was overjoyed. With the addition of the Huo family's forces, Yang Kai's strength would definitely increase greatly. "I had no choice but to give them to him." Wuxia was very embarrassed and didn't want to explain too much. Walking over to the boxes, he opened them and shouted to Yang Kai, "Look, a box of alchemy materials, a box of artifact refining materials, all of which are at least heaven grade, a few mysterious grade, a box of finished pills, a box of healing materials, a box of soul calming pills, a box of artifacts, and, although the grade is a bit low, all of them are earth grade, but they should be enough to equip some people. There are also a few good items." Finished speaking, Wuxia stared at Yang Kai majestically and asked, "For boxes, and this young master, you can choose what you want." You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.